The city streets are unusually deserted. The sky, reddened by the sunset, adds to the tense atmosphere. An announcement over the loudspeaker confirms a breach in the underground. All citizens in the vicinity must evacuate immediately. A young man with headphones on is listening to music and performing repair work while standing on a ladder. Some parts of the building need to be painted. The young man surveyed his work and said that everything was now ready. The music in his headphones continues to play. The hunter's pub called The Tavern was finished. There was still not a soul on the street except for this man. The young man said that all that was left now was to arrange the furniture and the establishment could open. The young man looked around and only now realized that there was no one around. He was surprised, since this was the center of the capital. Where had everyone gone? The guy took off his headphones and only then heard the sound of a siren and warnings coming from a loudspeaker. He even jumped in surprise and said his heart nearly leapt out of his chest. Had the dungeon really been breached? The young man looked at his headphones and said they were right to be praised for their noise-canceling feature. Until now, he hadn't heard anything but music. Modern technology is pure magic. You can't hear any of the noise or commotion from outside through the headphones. Suddenly, a horde of zombies appeared from around the corner. The guy was surprised. Could things really be that bad if so many of these monsters were hanging around here? He had to do something. The young man looked around for a suitable object. The young man was surprised. What were the hunters doing? Where had they all gone? A bat and a crowbar were within reach. The young man gripped the crowbar tightly in his right hand and said that there had never been such chaos in the old days. The youth had gone completely soft. The man jumped down from the stepladder and, swinging whatever he could get his hands on, began to deal with the zombies. He realized he'd probably have to clean up the mess himself. The guy couldn't just leave these zombies be because who knows what they might do to his new pub. The number of zombies began to dwindle steadily. The man was handling the situation with great skill. It seemed he was a master with a bat and a crowbar. Zombie blood was everywhere. Their bodies, with broken bones, lay scattered around. The man said that rowdy trash wasn't welcome here, so they shouldn't expect a warm welcome. The guy smiled and said, "Has his place really become such a hit?" New groups of zombies kept arriving. Just before opening, so many customers showed up. The man was covered in zombie blood. A large pile of destroyed bodies already lay at his feet. He said that the brave ones among the remaining survivors could come closer. A whole year had passed since then. The capital now looked nice and tidy. The hunter's pub, The Tavern, was open and always ready to welcome visitors. A female patron of the pub said she didn't believe it. Was it even legal that tomorrow was already Monday? It was B-rank Sheriff Chae Min-jong. She said she'd been working overtime every day this month, including weekends. She'd even worked today and come here right after her shift. Myung-jung complained. Where were her days off? Her bosses were like slave traders. A man sitting nearby said that Myung-jung could just quit, take everything, and walk away. The girl drained her mug and said she really wanted to do just that. However, if she found another job, she wouldn't even come close to earning a comparable salary. B-rank hunter. Kim Hwan told the sheriff to join the hunters and join his guild. He was willing to put in a good word for her. Chae Min-jong said she would never agree to that. Even though they pay more, the work is dirtier. She'd heard that this time, many hunters had been stuck at the gates for several months. Working as a sheriff, at least she gets to go home after her shift. When a mission ends, she gets time off. Meanwhile, the bartender kept pouring drinks. Min-jong told her companion that he and the other hunters should just do their jobs properly. If they had closed the gates on time, the sheriffs wouldn't have had to intervene at all. Kim Hwan pointed out that it wasn't that simple, since there were too many gates for that number of hunters. Min-jong pointed out that if the guy tried harder, he could save his former classmate. Kim Hwan said that Min-jong was a real beast who strangled orcs with her bare hands. Did she really need saving? She shouldn't act like a weak girl. Min-jong took offense at her former classmate. Why was he calling her that? Maybe he wanted this beast to shake all the nonsense out of him, like dust from a carpet. Yoon Lee-jun, the owner of The Tavern, placed a drink in front of the visitor and said that the double Faust was ready. Yoon Lee-jun told the two of them to drink their drinks right there. But if they wanted to have a lover's quarrel, they should get lost and go home. He couldn't stand watching them. They shouldn't upset a lonely man. Min-jong shouted loudly that that wasn't true at all. The owner reacted calmly to her outburst and said, "With her, things are never what they seem." Yoon Lee-jun added that watching those two made a lonely person want to cry. Kim Hwan told the girl not to pay any attention. The owner was just having some fun. If she reacted to his remark, he wouldn't stop. The hunter said that the sheriff falls for the owner's jabs every day. Doesn't life teach her anything? Min Jong was angry, and Yoon Lee-jun smiled slyly. The owner of the tavern said that if the ice melted, it would ruin the drink's taste. The girl caught herself and immediately calmed down. Min Jong downed the contents of her glass in one gulp and said that everything was fine now. Kim Hwan said she was crazy. How could she drink that much of this stuff? Min Jung told the guy to mind his own business. She didn't want to hear that from someone who drank undiluted barrel-strength whiskey. Kim Hwan calmly said that at least he didn't drink whiskey like a barbarian. The girl replied that if you savored it drop by drop, you couldn't taste the alcohol at all. Kim Hwan remarked that this ignorant woman didn't understand anything at all. The sheriff asked the bartender to make another Faust. She wanted a double, shaken but not stirred. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he would take care of it right away. A loud noise was heard from outside. The patrons looked around. Suddenly, someone slammed the door from the outside so hard that it flew off its hinges and landed in the middle of the room. The owner of the tavern and the patrons were extremely surprised. It was definitely a stranger. A stranger entered the tavern and demanded a drink. He said he wanted the strongest liquor available, a whole bottle no less. The stranger took a few steps forward and stood on the door lying on the floor. The visitor told the tavern owner that he had had breakfast with his boss that day and had even gone to the sauna. The sheriff and the hunter realized that this wasn't just some drunk who had wandered into the tavern. Glowing blue eyes and bulging veins, clear signs of mana poisoning. The visitor demanded another drink. This was definitely a mana-infected individual. Kim Hwan loosened his tie and said it wouldn't be easy. But with two B-rank awakened ones here, there shouldn't be any problems. There was a risk he might turn into a demon, so they needed to lure him outside and deal with him there. Min Jung agreed. The sheriff told the master to stay put. The awakened ones would have to handle this. Yoon Lee-jun looked down and saw him standing by the front door. Kim Hwan told the big guy he'd buy him the drink he was looking for, but they'd have to go outside to do it. They'd talk there. The visitor said he didn't want to go anywhere. He would drink here. Min Jung, rubbing her hands together, told the burly man in a rougher tone to get outside immediately. The lovely lady offered him a full-body massage. It would take all his stress away in a flash. It would be foolish to miss such a chance. The customer got angry, grabbed a chair, and smashed it against a nearby table. The situation escalated. The villain told the terrifying woman not to get in his way. Kim Hwan got angry and punched the visitor in the jaw. The hunter declared that one must not tell people the truth to their faces. As he continued to beat the infected man, the hunter added that it was a personal insult, even if it was the absolute truth. The villain wasn't hurt at all. He turned around and grabbed the hunter by the head with his huge hand. Kim Hwan tried to fight back and demanded that the villain let him go. However, it was in vain. The villain lifted the hunter off the ground and said that this guy was annoying him. Min Jong decided to take action. She asked if the brute hadn't heard what she'd said. He had to let the man go immediately. The girl unleashed a unique strike. The villain staggered and released the hunter. Min Jung, using her fire skill, continued to press the thug. The villain fell onto his back. Min Jung asked the hunter how he was feeling. Kim Hwan replied that he was fine, he just let his guard down, but it would pass. The sheriff stated that this man was far from an ordinary infected. The hunter agreed. Judging by his strength and speed, he was at least B rank. If they didn't exercise caution, things could end badly. Kim Hwan said that if he had his sword with him, he would have taken down that scoundrel in a heartbeat. Min Jong replied that it didn't matter now. But was that an insult disguised as the truth? The sheriff added that she would hold that against Kim Hwan later. The old friends decided to attack simultaneously. Min Jong also continued to use her fire skills. The villain's eyes began to glow even brighter. He told them not to stand in his way. At the same time, his body began to transform. One powerful blow, and the attackers were sent flying to the side. The infected man turned into an aggressive monster that began tearing the pub to pieces. Min Jun noted that this villain had already fully transformed into a demon. Would they even be able to defeat him without weapons? Kim Hwan replied that he didn't know. The hunter added that they had to try anyway. The owner of the tavern was still there, and he was just an ordinary civilian. Yoon Lee-jun headed toward the enormous monster. The sheriff shouted that it might be dangerous there. Kim Hwan told the master not to stand in front of that villain. They needed to run away immediately. However, Yoon Lee-jun was calm and confident. The monster demanded a drink again. The sheriff said that the owner of the tavern had gone mad. Even experienced hunters don't always manage to handle a monster like this. Kim Hwan repeated that the master should run away immediately. The owner clenched his fists and said menacingly to the visitor, If you came to the pub, you should sit quietly and drink your drink. This scoundrel had trashed the entire tavern. The villain swung at the master and said that if he didn't want to give him a drink, then he would continue to rampage and destroy everything here. Minjung screamed in fear, telling the owner to dodge. Yoon Lee-jun didn't even think about dodging. He landed a powerful blow on the thug. The monster even staggered. Yoon Lee-jun landed a series of blows to his opponent's shoulder. The monster's arm went limp and stopped responding to him. The master told the monster to grit his teeth if he didn't want to wear dentures for the rest of his life. The beating of the thug continued. In response, the monster laughed. What kind of dentures is this man talking about? Yoon Lee-jun continued to strike. The monster's teeth flew in all directions. The master kicked him in the leg, right on the pressure point. The monster lost his balance. He could no longer put any weight on his injured leg. Yoon Lee-jun kept beating the thug. Yoon Lee-jun was outraged and asked why this scoundrel had come to his pub. The master slammed the monster's head against the bar counter several times. The monster stopped moving. Yoon Lee-jun held his head down against the counter for a while longer. The protagonist said that the rowdy scum had been eliminated. He had to relieve some stress. The owner of the tavern declared that anyone who dared to wreck his pub would be destroyed. The sheriff and the hunter were stunned by Yoon Lee-jun's behavior. They decided it was best never to anger the master. Minjung asked if the master was sure he was just a retired B-rank hunter. He didn't fit into that league at all. The hunter pointed out that that's exactly what was written in the country's hunter registry. Yoon Lee-jun told the sheriff that his pub had been destroyed during a demon attack. He had only defended himself because his life was in danger. This is considered self-defense and is covered by insurance. The monster groaned. Yoon Lee-jun kicked it a few times and told it to keep quiet since he was talking to people here. Minjung looked at the deactivated monster and asked if this hooligan could have really threatened the master's life. Yoon Lee-jun remarked that this useless trash just wouldn't calm down. Hooligans these days have no idea how to behave properly. Yoon Lee-jun noted that, from a legal standpoint, he was in the clear. The sheriff agreed and added that everyone should approve this. There could be no doubt. The demon clearly attacked first. She herself, as sheriff, had witnessed the situation unfold. Yoon Lee-jun was satisfied because if they hadn't approved it, he would have had to go and wreck the police station. The hunter thought the pub owner was a strange man. The master was anything but ordinary. That had become clear from their very first meeting, which had taken place a year ago. The man had reached out his hand and told the guy to wake up. Why on earth had he decided to pass out right in front of his pub on opening day? Yoon Lee-jun stood before a man stripped to the waist lying on the sidewalk. The guy got to his feet, apologized, and said he must have blacked out for a moment. He would leave right away and apologized if he had interfered with the business's success. Yoon Lee-jun stopped the guy and told him to wait a moment. The owner added that there were no customers anyway, and he was dying of boredom. Why not have a drink before leaving? Yoon Lee-jun added that alcohol is excellent for disinfecting wounds. The young man looked up and saw the tavern sign. The young man realized he had no money. He appreciated the offer, but he didn't even have enough for a pack of ramen. The owner of the tavern said he was feeling generous today. Since this guy was his first customer, he was treating him on the house. A bottle of 25-year-old whiskey appeared on the table in front of the young men. The guest took a sniff and said that the drink smelled like a dentist's office. Why do people even drink this? The owner remarked that that was the whole charm of it. This drink is so popular that it's not easy to find. The young man asked, "Does anyone really like drinking this swill?" Yoon Lee-jun replied that the peaty flavor takes some getting used to, but once it grows on you, you can't imagine life without it. The owner was certain that as soon as the visitor got home, he'd want to try this drink again. Yoon Lee-jun told the young man that his father couldn't stand it at first either, but eventually didn't want to drink anything else. The young man was surprised. Did the owner of the tavern really know his father? Yoon Lee-jun confirmed this and added, "His name was Kim Hong, wasn't it?" The master noted that the man had been in his debt when he was just starting out as a hunter. At first he wasn't sure, but this young man's mannerisms and facial expressions were exactly like those of his old acquaintance. Kim Hwan saw a notification that a photo had been sent to him. The master said that Hong was always bragging about his son, so he'd seen more than his fair share of his childhood photos. Thanks to Hong, he was able to adapt to life as a hunter fairly quickly. Kim Hwan said that everything made sense to him now. Actually, he had recently become a hunter himself, but this was the first time he had met someone who knew his father. Yoon Lee-jun noted that Kim Hong was from the older generation and rarely visited the country. Therefore, after observing him, he decided to retire. Kim Hwan asked if it was okay for his companion to be drinking during work hours while dressed like that. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he does whatever he wants. He's the boss here. No one can tell him what to do. The pub owner pointed to the sign on the door and said he didn't plan on serving anyone else today, so he'd already put up the closed sign. He didn't feel like working today anyway. The pub wouldn't really open until tomorrow. Kim Hwan said that the image of a bartender in his mind was a bit more disciplined. This place is a complete mess. Yoon Lee Jun remarked that this was the main appeal of being the boss. Kim Hwan agreed. Being in charge had its perks. Yoon Lee Jun asked why this guy was lying in such a state in front of his pub. Even the lowest-ranking hunters aren't beaten up like that. Kim Hwan remained silent and lowered his head. The owner noted that the guy didn't have to answer if he didn't want to. He just asked out of curiosity. The hunter replied that there was nothing special about it. He owed money to loan sharks, couldn't pay the interest, so they beat him up. Yoon Lee Jun was surprised. Kim Hoon had made decent money in his lifetime. How could this have happened? Kim Hwan replied that his mother had acted as a guarantor for a friend and lost everything. Then, when he was in high school, she left a note of apology and disappeared. He also has a younger brother who is in elementary school. Yoon Lee Jun asked how much money the guy had borrowed if he couldn't even pay the interest. Even newbies should have a decent income. Kim Hwan replied that his main debt was 10 million coins. Yoon Lee Jun remarked that this amount could easily be covered by clearing a few low-level gates. Kim Hwan added that the debt increases by 5% every month. Now that he's become a hunter, he's paying it off little by little. But before that, he couldn't pay anything at all, so the debt grew to 800 million. Kim Hwan added that a few years ago, he urgently needed money for his brother's surgery, but no one would lend to a child, so he had to turn to hunter loan sharks. The young man explained that this is an illegal lending business run by the hunters themselves. Current laws cannot fully control the awakened, so even when they set astronomical interest rates, no one can do anything about it. Yoon Lee Jun asked where the sheriffs or the guild were looking. Don't they provide protection? Kim Hwan explained that these loan sharks were just as powerful as the major guilds, so everyone simply turned a blind eye to it. The authorities didn't have enough manpower to go to war against them, since all their forces were focused on containing dungeon breakthroughs. Yoon Lee Jun was outraged when he heard about hunters running illegal businesses. He had once gone to great lengths to make the world livable, but in the end, things had turned out this way. The pub owner added that he was just thinking out loud. Kim Hwan left the tavern and headed home. He felt relaxed for the first time in a long while. The hunter decided he'd had too much to drink because he'd been treated to free drinks. He decided to come back here once he got some money. Two people crossed the hunter's path. One of them was upset. It turned out this guy had money for drinks but couldn't pay his debt. He definitely had a stash hidden away. His partner said his colleague was right. It was good they decided to come back and check everything out. The thug said he was really nervous because his boss had scolded him. He needed to beat this guy up a little more to let off some steam. His partner agreed. The hooligan suggested breaking this guy's leg. The thug refused, because then he wouldn't be able to earn money to pay them back. They had to do something else. Suddenly, another person appeared in front of them. The thug asked, "Who's this guy?" The thug noticed that he was seeing this face for the first time. "What's this guy doing here?" Yoon Lee Jun, and it was him, grabbed the bullies by the heads and squeezed them tightly. The two screamed loudly in pain. Yoon Lee Jun released his grip, and the thugs fell to the ground, bleeding profusely. The protagonist realized that to trash like these two, he was just a man with a lot of questions. The loan shark office was called Hunting Loans with Love. The boss was furious. Why were these assistants taking so long to return? They'd be in trouble if they were taking a break somewhere. The secretary told the boss that he would try to reach them by phone right away. The boss was Pak Won-man, CEO of Hunting Loans with Love. He said those two had become completely lazy. When they returned, he would have to give them a good talking to. An unfamiliar voice declared that there was no need for that, because he had brought the two of them here himself. The boss was surprised. The front door burst open with a crash. Nothing like this had ever happened here before. The secretary was frightened. Could this be an attack by a rival firm? Yoon Lee Jun appeared in the doorway. Lying before him were the beaten and bloodied thugs. The guy said he was just a kind neighbor who brought the trash, since they were looking for these two here. There was no need to thank him. Pak Won-man asked indignantly, "What's going on here? Who is this guy anyway?" Yoon Lee Jun looked around and saw that, besides the boss, there were several other armed thugs in the office. Yoon Lee Jun said he was the owner of a pub who had stopped by to clean up his neighborhood. Pak Won-man said he was some kind of fool. He would have to pay for acting like a madman. He could consider today the anniversary of his death. The boss warned his henchmen that they would be burying this body today. One man ordered his bodyguards to tear the guy to pieces. Armed thugs attacked the pub owner. Yoon Lee-jun said they could try to overpower him if they thought they could succeed. After that day, the loan shark hunters completely vanished from the city. Suddenly freed from the crushing burden of debt, Kim Hwan began preparing for dungeon runs more thoroughly than ever. His talents were recognized by the guild, allowing him to become the youngest group leader. Moreover, all other forms of the hunters' illegal businesses, which had flourished in the shadows, also vanished without a trace. Kim Hwan thought he hadn't understood it back then, but now he knew for sure. Without a doubt, the reason for all of this was the master's arrival in the city. With his arrival, not only did Kim Hwan benefit, order also reigned in the capital. The owner asked why the hunter and the sheriff were looking at him like that. The bar was closed for the day, so they could go home. After a while, order was restored in the pub. Yoon Lee-jun admitted that cleaning up hadn't been easy. It was a good thing he had insurance. Not a single day goes by peacefully in this neighborhood. Yoon Lee-jun felt hungry and decided to make ramen before going to bed. The master stepped out of the pub. He mused aloud about what he'd like to eat right now. Yoon Lee-jun saw a child lying on the floor at the entrance to the tavern. Who is this? How did he end up here? The girl said that her dad could open his eyes now. Her father called her his little princess. Her father was holding a gift. The girl said it was for his birthday. The little princess said that it had been hard for her dad to take care of her. She will always be grateful to him. She is so happy that she was born his daughter. The girl asked why her dad was crying. Was he in pain? The man replied that he wasn't in pain. He too was very happy to be her dad. The girl smiled and said that was a wonderful answer. A wristwatch appeared on the man's wrist. He said it was a magnificent gift, that the watch was very beautiful, and that he would take good care of it. Yoon Lee-jun opened his eyes and thought it had all been just a dream. A small child appeared before the protagonist's eyes. Yoon Lee-jun jumped out of bed. He said she had scared him very badly. Yoon Lee-jun asked who she was and remembered that she was the very same girl he had found on the doorstep of the tavern the day before. The protagonist told the girl she didn't need to thank him. He simply couldn't leave a child lying unconscious in the middle of the street. The girl held up 2 fingers and stretched her hand forward. Yoon Lee-jun said she could rest for now until she regained her strength. Then she could leave. The girl silently jabbed her fingers into our hero's eyes. The guy screamed loudly from the surprise and pain. 10 minutes earlier, everyone in the room had been asleep. Yoon Lee-jun on the floor, the girl on his bed. The girl stirred and began to wake up. Yoon Lee-jun continued to sleep soundly. Lee Ruri sat up in bed and stretched. The girl said, "Good morning." Lee Ruri looked around and wondered in surprise, where was she now? Lee Ruri said that the bed was so soft and fluffy. It was simply incredible. The girl looked at the floor and saw a man lying next to her. Who was he? She became frightened. Lee Ruri remembered how her mentor had told her that the outside world was full of perverts. That's why you should never go anywhere with strangers. They might lock her in their room forever and start doing all sorts of horrible things. Lee Ruri asked what she should do in that case, if she had already been caught. Iroh replied that the girl should poke the scoundrel right in the eyes with her fingers and then give him a good kick between the legs. Now Lee Ruri wondered, could this really be the very kidnapping her mentor had been talking about? Yoon Lee-jun stirred. Lee Ruri realized the kidnapper was waking up. The girl was at a loss. She didn't know what to do. Lee Ruri remembered Iroh's instructions and jabbed her fingers into the stranger's eyes. Yoon Lee-jun hadn't expected his day to start with such pain and asked what she was doing. The girl replied that she was punishing the kidnapper who had stolen a fragile and beautiful girl. Yoon Lee-jun said that this wasn't kidnapping. The day before, she had been lying unconscious in front of his pub, so he brought her here so she could rest and come to her senses. The girl pointed out that she had been taught that moving someone's body without their consent constitutes kidnapping. Yoon Lee-jun replied that it all depends on the situation. Yoon Lee-jun asked why the girl had poked him in the eyes with her fingers. After all, that hurts. If he were an ordinary person, he would definitely have gone blind, the girl explained. Iroh said that's exactly what she was supposed to do. She did everything right. Yoon Lee-jun's eyes welled up with tears. He asked, "Who on earth is Iroh?" She must be some kind of crazy person. Our hero, holding his eyes, wondered, why on earth did he pick up this girl? He shouldn't have given her his bed. He should have just left her on the street. Lee Ruri thought, a warm room, a roof to shelter from the rain. Maybe being kidnapped isn't so bad after all? Yoon Lee-jun said, again, that this wasn't a kidnapping. The master said the door was open and the girl could go anywhere she wanted. Lee Ruri didn't budge. Yoon Lee-jun asked why she wasn't leaving. No one was holding her here. She could do whatever she wanted. The girl lowered her head and said she didn't know what she was supposed to do. Go anywhere. Do whatever she wants. What does uncle mean? The girl's stomach growled loudly. Lee Ruri said she wanted to eat. The guy ruffled the girl's hair and said that in that case, they would eat first and talk later. The protagonist tried to cook the food as quickly as possible and told the little troublemaker to wait a little while. He was going to make something very tasty using the healthiest ingredients. Lee Ruri watched silently as everything unfolded. Her stomach was still growling loudly for food. After a while, a strawberry roll was sitting on the table. The girl tasted the treat and said it was very delicious, soft and sweet. Now she knows what a strawberry roll tastes like. Yoon Lee Jun and Min Jung watched the girl. Lee Ruri kept saying from time to time that it was incredible and amazing. The sheriff noticed that this girl had an excellent appetite. Yoon Lee Jun wondered how she could fit so much in. After all, they had just had a hearty meal an hour ago. Min Jong said there was nothing surprising about it. Everyone knows there's a separate stomach for dessert. The orc priest Kim Dokbae entered the tavern. He said he was always pleased to see a child eating well. It was good that he had bought a roll on the way. Yoon Lee Jun asked Min Jung if she had found out what he had asked her to. The woman replied that neither the police nor the sheriff had received any reports of a missing elf child. The orc said he had also asked the locals, but no one had ever seen this child before. Yoon Lee Jun wondered, maybe he should take her to an orphanage. Min Jong said that would be the wrong thing to do. The pub owner was surprised. Kim Dokbae noted that children's orphanages are difficult to maintain, and they are mainly designed for human children. That's why half-humans often become victims of bullying there. Min Jong added that the girl didn't look like a pure-blooded elf. It was quite possible that she was a half-breed, so neither the elves nor the humans would welcome her. The master asked what he should do with the child in that case. What suggestions were there? The priest said they would look for other options. For now, the master must look after her. Yoon Lee Jun was surprised. Why him of all people? The sheriff asked. Is the master really going to abandon the child at an orphanage and pretend he doesn't know her? Is he really that kind of person? Kim Dokbae added that it really was too cruel. Yoon Lee Jun said it was easy for those two to talk since the problem didn't concern them. Taking care of children isn't that simple. Lee Ruri told her uncle that it was very tasty and suggested they finish the roll together. Yoon Lee Jun picked up a fork and said he agreed. He'd check at the same time to see if the roll was really that good. Kim Dokbae, thinking out loud, wondered if the owner would let the girl stay with him. Min Jong replied that she was 100% sure he would. Min Jong asked the priest why he was drinking macchioli at a bar. Kim Dokbae picked up the bottle and said that macchioli was his favorite drink. He couldn't drink strong alcohol like his older sister. Min Jun flew into a rage again. After all, she had repeatedly told him not to call her Nuna. Kim Dokbae pointed out that he was only 26 years old. The sheriff was a year older, which meant she was his Nuna. Min Jung said the orc was making fun of her. The girl declared that she didn't like any of this at all. How could a priest with a face like that be younger than her? She would never believe it. Besides, it wasn't proper for a priest to drink Macaulay. It was all too strange. Kim Dokbae said conciliatorily that the sheriff should just accept it. Min Jong said that all of this was annoying her. Lee Ruri carried a bowl of food out of the tavern and set it down on the ground. The kitten sitting nearby meowed contentedly. The kitten happily began to eat. The girl noticed that he was really hungry. Lee Ruri asked if his mother cat had come for him. Maybe he'd decided to live on his own starting today. Yoon Lee Jun watched from the sidelines as the girl sweetly talked to the kitten. The master had the feeling that Lee Ruri was actually talking to the cat. This kitten had always been timid and wouldn't approach anyone but him. Could he have just accepted food from the girl so easily? Nearby at the next intersection, a gate appeared. The sheriff told the hunter that these gates had been assigned to their guild. Kim Hwan replied that he already knew that. The hunter noted that the association had given them a lot of gates during the allocation. Because of this, there weren't nearly enough people to clear them out. The sheriff stated that she felt exactly the opposite. Now they would be the ones working overtime. Kim Hwan replied that overtime was the least of their worries. He had been called in on his day off. The squad commander reported that the gates had not yet entered berserk mode. The squad of hunters, fully combat ready, arrived at the gate at the first command. The hunter squad, Min Jong, and Kim Hwan awaited the gate's transformation. It wouldn't be long now. After a while, the squad commander, Lee Yoon Young, announced that the gate had entered berserk mode. The next moment, armed monsters began emerging from the gate. The hunters immediately attacked these monsters, preventing them from spreading throughout the city. Sheriff Min Jong, performing her duties to maintain order and using her unique abilities, fire magic, also attacked the monsters. Minjong noted that these monsters were very noisy and smelly freaks. Captain Lee Yun-young ordered all units to open fire to kill. The armed hunters opened fire with automatic weapons, declaring that these green monsters must be destroyed. Kim Hwan, sword in hand, bravely fought the monsters, landing critical hits on them. The hunter said he had to stay on high alert at all times since there were so many monsters. Minjong, using fire magic, set nearby monsters ablaze as if with a flamethrower. Kim Hwan said that the sheriff was acting very provocatively, as if she were the only one destroying these monsters. Minjong replied that from the outside, her behavior looked very cool. The hunter and the sheriff decided to make a bet. Whoever kills fewer goblins would have to buy drinks today. Kim Hwan said that thanks to the sheriff, he'd be drinking on someone else's tab today. In the end, Minjong killed one fewer monster. In the end, Minjong drank free alcohol. The girl said sadly that she had lost. The hunter added that he would gladly drink to her health, and on her tab. Minjong snapped back at him angrily. Yoon Lee-jun said that dungeon breaches and incidents at the gates were a common occurrence. Minjong told the bartender to make them another round. Yoon Lee-jun greeted the new visitor. Minjong saw this visitor and, unable to control herself, sprayed a stream of drink from her mouth right at her companion. Kim Hwan cursed in response and asked what she was doing here. Minjong was surprised. "What is the chairman doing here?" The association chairman had indeed entered the tavern. The old man said he was very happy to see them. He hadn't seen Minjong and Kim Hwan in a long time. He was glad that his former classmates were still getting along so well. Kim Hwan still didn't look cheerful. He greeted the chairman. It was the chief sheriff and chairman of the Hunters Association, an S-rank hunter, Baek Cheol-gu. The chairman apologized for the late visit, but he needed to speak with the owner of the establishment. Baek Cheol-gu asked the two of them to step out for a few minutes. Minjong was surprised. Could the owner really know the chairman? Kim Hwan got up from his seat and said they were about to leave anyway. Minjong objected, since she had just placed her order and they still had plenty of food left. Kim Hwan said her boss was asking them to leave. Baek Cheol-gu apologized for interrupting them. Because of this, he would pay their bill. Minjong was delighted and said she'd save money on drinks today. Kim Hwan pointed out that the deal still stood. She would pay for the second round. Yoon Lee-jun told Lee Ruri to go upstairs to her room. The girl looked intently at the stern old man. Lee Ruri squinted and smiled at the chairman. The old man couldn't help himself and smiled back at the girl. The girl ran into the room and said that the slime baby was running away as fast as she could. Baek Cheol-gu remarked that this girl was very energetic. The host placed a glass in front of the chairman and asked, "Just 2 fingers of straight vodka?" Baek Cheol-gu confirmed this. The old man was pleased that the master still remembered. Baek Cheol-gu told the host that it had been a long time since they'd seen each other. Hunters make up only 1% of the Earth's total population. They are a select few, endowed with superpowers. Their strength was enough to stand up to the monsters appearing all over the world. Humanity established an association, creating a system perfectly suited for survival. Those who hunted the monsters were called hunters. The organization they created was called a guild. However, too many portals and dungeons appeared, and the hunters could no longer cope, for their strength was not limitless. Monsters began to break out of dungeons that hadn't been cleared in time, accompanied by various anomalies. The Hunters Association called this phenomenon dungeon breaches, or gate rampages. Only a portion of the hunters decided to devote themselves to eliminating these breaches, resulting in their profession splitting into 2 main categories. Those who focused on clearing the gates and dungeons were ordinary hunters. There were also those who chose to work for the state, sheriffs responsible for the country's internal security. The person who enacted the Hunter Act to protect peaceful citizens managed to restore order amidst the chaos, and led all the sheriffs was an S-rank hunter. He was the guardian Baek Cheol-gu. There was also the one whom this living legend called Brother. It was the owner of the tavern, Yoon Lee-jun. The protagonist asked how Cheol-gu knew he was here. The old man replied that he was, after all, the chairman of the Hunters Association, and had known for a long time that his brother had returned. Cheol-gu admitted that the drink the host was pouring was, as always, of excellent quality. The chairman noted that Yoon Lee-jun didn't even try to hide. After all, he openly hunted down criminal hunters. That's why they even nicknamed him Mad Dog. Yoon Lee-jun said he couldn't stand that nickname. With so many cool and flashy words out there, why did they have to call him Mad Dog? The chairman said he had nothing to do with it. Yoon Lee-jun agreed, adding that it simply annoyed him. Baek Cheol-gu said that in any case, Brother had helped them a lot by keeping order in the capital. The owner replied that the old man could keep his thanks to himself. He had merely restored order around his establishment. Baek Cheol-gu asked how many years had passed. It had been since Yoon Lee-jun left to search for Siwa that they'd last seen each other. The tavern owner replied that exactly 20 years had passed since their last meeting. The protagonist added that time flies and asked, "Are the old man's sense of taste and smell still the same?" Cheol-gu admitted that he still couldn't distinguish smells, or tastes for that matter. Yoon Lee-jun remarked that in that case, there was no point in treating the chairman to good liquor. The old man objected. He could still perfectly sense the strength of alcohol and the effects of intoxication. He could tell good vodka from cheap vodka. Yoon Lee-jun was surprised. After all, Cheol-gu used to jump out of bed at the mere mention of wine. Why did he make such a deal? The old man replied that he had no regrets. By sacrificing his sense of smell and taste, he had sharpened his other senses. This had made him much stronger. The chairman asked the tavern owner if he had found So-ah. The master replied that he still hadn't found that unbearable girl and had no idea where she might have run off to. He didn't have a single lead. The chairman asked how long the brother intended to continue this search. 20 years had already passed since her disappearance. Yoon Lee-jun told the old man to shut up. He didn't even dare to think anything bad. The protagonist added that he would only stop looking for So-ah on the day of his death. The old man laughed. He had begun to think that this guy had retired. However, his aura hadn't changed a bit. Cheol-gu remarked that his brother hadn't aged a bit. He'd heard such rumors, but the guy really did look exactly the same as he did 20 years ago. Yoon Lee-jun told Cheol-gu to stop talking so much and get to the point of his visit. What did the old man want from him? Cheol-gu asked. Can't a younger brother just come visit his older brother? Yoon Lee-jun was surprised. Since when had the old man become so sentimental? If that were true, he would have shown up here a year ago. Cheol-gu admitted that this was only half true. Lee Ruri rushed into the protagonist's arms and told her uncle that she was very hungry. The girl jumped onto his shoulders, clung to his hair, and said she wanted some really delicious food. Yoon Lee-jun said he understood. Lee Ruri had to get off him immediately. The girl kept demanding food. They had to hurry, and soon rice with vegetables and seafood was already cooking on the stove. Lee Ruri admitted that the dish smelled delicious. The girl urged her uncle on and demanded he hurry up. Yoon Lee-jun remarked that if she didn't sit still, she wouldn't get anything at all. The master tried not to get distracted and continued cooking. Lee Ruri watched the proceedings with admiration. Baek Cheol-gu asked if brother had heard of the Artificial Hunter Project. Yoon Lee-jun asked, "Is this like in the old days, when the Devilmen tried to churn out gifted individuals?" The old man confirmed this and added that there was one small difference. Previously, their goal was to artificially create awakened ones from scratch, but now they aim to transform low-ranking hunters into high-ranking ones through mutations. Cheol-gu asked, "Brother, you know about mana poisoning, right?" Yoon Lee-jun remarked that one such person had stopped by his pub the other day. The chairman added that this was a classic side effect of body modification using monster flesh or blood. If the symptoms worsen, the test subject loses their mind and turns into a devil human. The chances of success are slim, but with favorable genetic compatibility, the subject becomes a powerful awakened. Their rank increases by 1 level. If a miracle occurs, it can rise by 2 levels at once. Given the nature of these experiments, demon men are clearly behind them. The chairman added that they are still investigating, but there is no concrete confirmation yet. Even if they lack physical evidence, there is plenty of circumstantial evidence. Cheol-gu told his brother to listen to him until the end. The main goal of the Artificial Hunter Project is to enhance abilities through body modification. But new information has recently come to light. It concerns the child in the flask, the homunculus. These scoundrels are kidnapping refugee children from other worlds, artificially altering their genes and crossbreeding them with monsters to then grow homunculi from the resulting embryos. Yoon Lee-jun was outraged. How can they interfere so crudely with the laws of nature? He doubts that this yields any successful results at all. Even conception between humans, elves, and orcs is an enormous rarity. Yet they are trying to crossbreed creatures that are completely incompatible with one another. Cheol-gu agreed that this could not possibly succeed. Most children created in this way die within less than a month. Only 1 in 100 survives to reach a year of age. Undoubtedly, only madmen are capable of such a thing. Yoon Lee-jun said he deeply regretted it. But why was the chairman telling him all this? After all, he was no longer a hunter, and he had no need to know. Cheol-gu asked if the girl whom his brother had taken in was named Lee Ruri. All intelligence connections had been mobilized to compile a dossier on her. The old man added that no matter how hard he looked, He found absolutely nothing on her. Yoon Lee. June asked if this could really become a problem. The chairman confirmed it. 30 years have passed since the passage to another world was opened. The administrative system has long been streamlined. They live in an era where half humans cannot hide from the government. However, no mention of this child has been found anywhere. Cheol-gu noted that in that case there were only two possibilities. Either the girl is a refugee from another world, or she is a test subject from the Child in a Flask project. The chairman added that this was merely his assumption. She was likely just an ordinary refugee from another world. Often, they simply had bad luck. They stumbled into a portal or dungeon by accident and ended up on this side. Cheol-gu suggested that even if something extraordinary were to happen, it wouldn't be a problem for someone like Brother. Finishing the vodka in his glass, the chairman said he had decided to warn Yoon Lee Jun just in case. The tavern owner thanked him for the information. The chairman admitted that the drink was excellent and said goodbye to Brother. He promised to drop by for a visit from time to time. Yoon Lee Jun thought that this Bai Cheol-gu was a real sly one. He left quietly and didn't even pay the bill. The chef said the fried rice with kimchi was ready, and the girl could start eating. Lee Ruri tasted it and said it was insanely delicious. Could kimchi really become this tasty when fried? The girl added that it was so delicious she couldn't stop eating. Yoon Lee Jun remarked that it couldn't be any other way since he had cooked it himself. Recalling his conversation with the chairman, Yoon Lee Jun thought that whatever the truth might be, there was no place left for this girl to rest peacefully, except this pub. The firefighters arrived immediately after the first emergency call. The house was engulfed in flames. Several floors were already burning. Fear was evident in the woman's eyes, and she was shouting her daughter's name, Jihyo. The woman explained to the firefighters that her daughter was still inside. She gave them the room number and asked them to save the girl. One of the firefighters was terrified. Could the child really still be in there? He told the commander that she needed to be pulled out immediately. The commander replied that it was absolutely impossible to go in there right now. The firefighter said he couldn't just stand by and watch. The man added that they couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Hadn't they become firefighters to save people? The commander told Kim Jin-soo to pull himself together. Had the guy forgotten how Yoon Si-woo had died just a month ago? Neither civilians nor firefighters could escape from such a hellish scene. The commander added that one must distinguish between courage and recklessness. He didn't want to allow any more senseless losses. Kim Jin-soo stood before the flames, unable to do anything. It really did look like madness. Sheriff Min Jong suddenly appeared. The girl told everyone to step aside. She would save this child. Surely she understood correctly that a girl was still inside the house. The commander was surprised. What was she talking about? After all, it was very dangerous. Min Jong showed her hunter's license and said she was in a great hurry. They could skip the formalities. The firefighter confirmed that the girl was still in the room on the 5th floor. Min Jung thanked him for the information. The firefighter asked the commander, "Shouldn't we stop her?" The captain replied that everything would be fine, since she was a B-rank sheriff. This woman is one of the superhumans whom ordinary citizens aren't even allowed to judge. Suddenly, there was a powerful explosion, and debris from the building flew in all directions. The woman screamed and rushed toward the fire, but the firefighter held her back. A short time later, the sheriff emerged from the flames with a child in her arms. Min Jung reported that the girl was fine. The mother rushed to her daughter. Min Jung said there was no need to worry. The girl had simply lost consciousness briefly after inhaling smoke. The woman thanked the sheriff for saving her child. Min Jung spotted a suspicious-looking man in the crowd. She wished he weren't there. Min Jung thought she was really in for it now. The bartender was mixing a drink: brandy, orange liqueur, and lemon juice. Everything had to be shaken thoroughly. The result was a sweet and sour, strong and tempting sidecar cocktail. S-rank Sheriff Kim Min-soo said it was simply excellent. The man added that these cocktails always had the perfect balance. Yoon Lee Jun replied that it couldn't be any other way, since he made them himself. Min Jong wondered why the host was being so immodest. Yoon Lee Jun asked, "Who's grumbling again over there? It's making my ears itch." Kim Min-soo asked, "Is Min Jung still holding a grudge?" Her shift had ended long ago. It was time for her to calm down. Min Jung admitted that acting on her own during the surveillance was a huge mistake, but she just couldn't stand by and watch a child die right before her eyes. Kim Min-soo said she had done everything right. Min Jung was angry at the captain. Min Jung added that the captain always acts like he's some big shot, even though he doesn't know the first thing about working on Earth. Yet today, he lectured her for another half hour. Min Jung asked, "Does a hunter's rank really decide everything? How can a person with no common sense be in charge?" The girl remarked that Kim Min-soo should be in the captain's place. Min Jung added that his track record and skills are the best among all sheriffs. Kim Min-soo pointed out that he was only a C rank. Even though a sheriff's job is considered an office job, they're still hunters, and hunters won't listen to someone weaker than themselves. Min Jung said that wasn't true. After all, she always listened to Kim Min-soo. Min-soo reiterated that he believed the girl had done the right thing. If not for her, they wouldn't have been able to save that little girl. It was unlikely a hunter with salamander skin would have happened to be passing by. Kim Min-soo remarked that his own daughter could have been in that child's place. Just the thought of it was unsettling. However, the knowledge that Min Jung could come to the rescue brought him peace of mind. The sheriff told the girl not to worry. She wouldn't face any disciplinary action at work. Even the regular police could handle simple surveillance. The guy glanced at his watch and said it was time for him to leave. Min Jun was surprised. Why was Min-soo leaving already? After all, he'd only had one drink. Kim Min-soo said he needed to check something before going home. It was his daughter's birthday tomorrow, and he wanted to finish his paperwork ahead of time. Min Jung thought of her own daughter. She wished him good luck. Kim Min-soo remarked that the hunter didn't seem to be drinking much, but Min Jung should also go home early. The girl agreed and asked him to tell Hyun-jun that she missed the girl. Kim Min-soo said he would definitely pass that on to her daughter and left the tavern. Yoon Lee-jun remarked that he was an excellent mentor. Chae Min-jong agreed and added that he was the sheriff she respected most of all. Even though his hunter rank was stuck at C, he was one of the few who deserved to be called a sheriff. Yoon Lee-jun said you can't judge a person by their rank. Min Jung agreed and asked the bartender to pour her a sidecar too. Better make it a double. Sheriff Kim Min-soo was covered in blood and sitting on the ground. The criminal declared that the hunters here were the real villains. The criminal, holding a bat, said that they were just lucky to be born under a lucky star and become hunters without lifting a finger. Now they live comfortably thanks to their high salaries. The villain added that he too wanted to live life on his own terms, just like the hunters. There was no need to stand in his way. The scoundrel shouted at the hunter not to dare remain silent. He had to say something, anything. The villain grew even angrier. Did this man really intend to play silent with him until the very end? The criminal raised his bat and added that pretending wouldn't help him. He'd see how long this hunter could last. The villain began beating Kim Min-soo with the bat. After a while, other sheriffs arrived at the crime scene. Min Jung carefully examined the crime scene. Her colleagues were meticulously collecting evidence and taking photographs. Min Jung clenched a sheet of paper with the wanted criminal's photo in her hand with anger. With tears in her eyes, his daughter begged for her father to wake up. Kim Min-soo lay on a hospital bed wearing an oxygen mask. The girl said it was her birthday today. Daddy shouldn't be stuck here. After all, he promised they'd go to the amusement park and eat all kinds of delicious treats. His daughter cried by her father's bedside. Kim Min-soo never regained consciousness. Myung-jung appeared at the door of the ward, accompanied by the attending physician. The sheriff asked how he was doing. The doctor replied that, fortunately, he had been found shortly after being wounded. Moreover, thanks to a high-ranking healer, all external injuries had already been treated. It's a good thing he appeared in his normal state in front of his family. His injuries upon admission were simply horrific. That must be why he still hasn't regained consciousness. Min Jung was surprised. Could this really be a normal state? How could a doctor say something like that? The doctor apologized and noted that he had phrased it incorrectly. He merely meant that the patient looked almost unharmed. The girl kept crying. Min Jung seethed with rage. The sheriff said that the scoundrel who did this would definitely pay dearly for everything. Yoon Lee-jun quietly entered the ward late at night. He saw the sleeping girl and covered her with a blanket. The doctor assessed the patient's condition with an expert eye. He didn't make a sound so as not to wake the girl. Lee Ruri, standing nearby, said that the sheriff's little sister might be in danger right now. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he thought so too. She needed help. Incheon, the Chunggu Industrial District. An old abandoned building. A man is eating instant noodles inside the building. There are mangled bodies all around him. Blood is everywhere. He noted that shrimp ramen is the best. Suddenly, a voice behind him called out his name. Ryu So-hyun, 37 years old, male, 17 prior convictions. He has never worked an honest day in his life. A true scum who does nothing but maim those around him due to uncontrollable outbursts of rage. All this was being said to the girls slowly approaching the criminal. Sheriff Min Jong added that a month ago, he stabbed the owner of a computer club to avoid repaying a paltry debt. After that, he managed to break free from the police cordon thanks to his incredible physical abilities. Min Jong added that since he is not listed in the Registry of Awakened Ones, there is speculation that he is a devil man who underwent an illegal procedure. To eliminate this potential threat, a sheriff was dispatched to the scene. Ryu So-hyun saw the girl and remembered. She was the very same sheriff who had rescued a child from a burning building. The villain said she was very skilled at telling stories. Min Jong stated that the fact of the warehouse owner and his employees' deaths had been confirmed. Ryu So-hyun was arrested for assaulting a detective, trespassing, and dozens of other charges. The criminal laughed and said she was acting very provocatively. To her, as an awakened one, all people probably seemed like pathetic insects. Ryu So-hyun noticed that she had come here alone. Did she really expect him to obediently follow her orders? The sheriff showed her badge and told him to shut up immediately. He had the right to remain silent. Every word he said could now be used against him. She didn't care whether he hired a lawyer or not. The criminal's eyes flashed. He said they were all the same. All they did was force him to shut up and listen. They were just lucky enough to be born luckier than him. Ryu So-hyun said she had no right to ignore him, swung his bat, and shouted that he was going to destroy her right then and there. Min Jong said, "Finally, he's taken action." The main thing was that she had read him his rights. Min Jong dodged the bat and counterattacked the thug, landing a punch to his torso. The next blow landed on his jaw. Ryu So-hyun staggered and dropped the bat. Blood spurted from his mouth. Min Jong continued her attack. With a kick to the head, she knocked the criminal to the ground. The girl noticed that this scoundrel had talked so much about luck and injustice. Was this really all he was capable of? Min Jong realized that this scoundrel had beaten a C-rank hunter into a terrible state, so he couldn't possibly be that weak. The sheriff reached out her hand and told the scoundrel to get up immediately. She hadn't even started beating him yet. Ryu So-hyun raised his head, jumped to his feet, and shouted loudly. He swung his fist and lunged at the sheriff. Min Jong dodged the attack and said he was very slow and clumsy. After that, the girl landed another series of blows on her opponent. Ryu So-hyun kept coughing up blood. Min Jong was puzzled. Was he really that weak? After another blow, Ryu So-hyun flew to the side and fell to the ground. The sheriff approached the criminal again and asked why he was sitting there. Min Jong kicked him and told the scoundrel to get up immediately. Did he really think he'd get off that easily? Ryu So-hyun said that this woman had no right to look at him with such a scathing gaze. The villain shouted that she had no right to look down on him. After that, there was a bright flash, and the criminal transformed. Now the monster lunged at Min Jong. Min Jong managed to dodge effectively. The sheriff struck again, but this time at the monster. The monster stayed on its feet, counterattacked, and Min Jong took a heavy blow flying backward. The girl managed to stay on her feet. However, she realized she was now facing a more dangerous opponent. The monster said the games were over. The woman would regret coming here. Min Jong said she knew it all along. This was the demon's true form. Its movements had lacked technique, but now it was flitting about like a gymnast. The sheriff declared that now that everything had been confirmed, she no longer needed to hold back. Min Jong activated her fire skill and said she was now ready to give it her all. A fireball appeared in her hand. The girl hurled the ball and hit the monster in the head. The head burst into flames and the fire began to rage. The heat blast sent the monster's teeth flying in all directions, but it showed no fear. Min Jong activated chain reaction, and the monster's body was engulfed in flames. However, the sheriff noticed that the fire was starting to die down, and this surprised her. The girl saw that the monster was devouring the flames. How was that possible? The monster said that the sheriff was a scoundrel, but that her flames were quite tasty. The monster thanked the girl for the fire and added that the flames had really perked him up. Min Jong noticed that the monster had sped up. Its attacks became faster and stronger. The sheriff blocked her opponent's blows, but they were now more precise. The more fire he consumed, the stronger he became. Usually, Demon's physical strength corresponds to B rank, though right now his was closer to A rank. No wonder he had defeated Kim Min-soo. Min Jong closed the distance to within arm's reach and landed a punch right on her opponent's head. The monster just laughed in response and told her to hit him even harder. Ryu So-hyun asked the sheriff to attack him properly with her flame at least one more time. Min Jong realized that this monster was clearly some kind of pervert. The opponents exchanged a series of blows. Neither had the upper hand. Min Jong thought she had the speed advantage, but her opponent was much stronger. The longer the fight dragged on, the faster she would run out of steam. The monster uses flames to regenerate. If she lets even a single blow land, the fight is as good as over. Its fire completely suppresses the abilities of the awakened one. The last thing the girl wanted to admit was that she was no match for this monster. Min Jong decided she would have to accept it after all. If she didn't face the truth, she wouldn't be able to win. She had to focus. If her opponent landed even a single accurate blow, she wouldn't be able to hold her ground. The monster came close enough to ask what the sheriff was thinking so intently about right in the middle of the fight. Min-jong noticed that he had become even faster. Ryu So-hyun struck, and the sheriff fell to the ground. The girl felt pain and realized she had stumbled onto metal bars that pierced right through her body. The monster said they were all like that. Everyone called him trash, despised him, ignored him, and thought he was worthless. Ryu So-hyun added that now he had gained the power to crush those arrogant hunters into dust. Now, no one would dare ignore him. The monster stepped closer and asked if the woman on her knees wanted to beg him for mercy. Perhaps he would take pity on her and spare her life. Min-jong raised her hand and gave the monster the middle finger. She added that she saw a pathetic sight before her. Ryu So-hyun got angry, swung his fist, and lunged at the sheriff. Min-jong closed her eyes and thought that this was the end for her. Kim Hwan would avenge her. However, nothing happened. Min-jong opened her eyes and saw the owner of the tavern standing before her. Yoon Lee-jun stepped between her and the monster and blocked its path. The girl was surprised. What was the master doing here? Yoon Lee-jun grabbed the monster by the head and squeezed it tightly. The monster was surprised. What was going on here? Yoon Lee-jun asked who he even was. The master was outraged. How dare this scoundrel lay a hand on his precious client? Lee Ruri approached the sheriff. The girl was holding a flask of liquid. She said her uncle had asked her to give this to her little sister. Min-jung realized it was a healing potion. The sheriff took the vial and thanked Ruri for her help. She said she had one small request for the girl. The girl asked Ruri to cover her eyes with her hands and not peek. The sheriff thought that if she drank the potion now, her wounds would heal in an instant. Overcoming the intense pain, Min-jung leaned forward and slid down from the metal bars. Blood gushed out with renewed force. Covering the wound with her hand, Min-jung downed the healing potion in one gulp. The wounds began to close before her eyes. The sheriff thought that this potion was at least of medium rank. Min-jung stroked the girl's head and told her she could open her eyes now. The girl thanked Ruri and remarked that she felt much better now. Yoon Lee-jun continued to hold the monster by the arm. Ryu So-hyun demanded that the man let him go. The master slammed the monster to the ground with all his might. He said it would be better for him not to resist. The monster leapt to its feet. Fire burst from its mouth. The villain said he would never forgive this man. The monster opened its mouth wide and released a powerful stream of flame. Yoon Lee-jun wasn't hurt in the slightest. The master punched the monster in the head and asked, "Is that what you call a fire breath?" Min-jung pulled the girl close and said it was unbelievable. The master had dispelled the monster's fire breath with nothing but a blast of air. The monster looked around, unable to figure out where the man had gone. Yoon Lee-jun suddenly appeared behind the monster and said that it was terribly inattentive. The master struck the monster again and knocked it to the ground. The young man called the monster rude and asked if he understood what he had done wrong. Ryu So-hyun didn't know where to hide and replied that he didn't know what he had done wrong. The protagonist continued beating the villain and said that he shouldn't talk to adults that way. He had to be polite. The master remarked that words wouldn't help here. Doesn't this guy get it? The guy added that he's always hated people who don't know their place. Yoon Lee-jun added that the monster had made two serious mistakes. Ryu So-hyun shouted that he hadn't done anything wrong. If anyone was to blame, it was humans and this whole rotten world. The protagonist kicked the monster and told him he had to listen until the end and not interrupt when adults were speaking. The man asked who taught this monster to be so rude. He needs to be taught a proper lesson. Yoon Lee-jun added that this guy had made two mistakes. First, he raised his hand against the master's regular customer. Second, this scoundrel ruined the celebration for a father who wanted to wish his daughter a happy birthday. The beating of the monster continued. Ryu So-hyun shouted for the man to stop. He admits that he was truly in the wrong. Yoon Lee-jun continued. Third, he saw the girl's tears on her birthday. The master added that fourth, this had seriously angered him. Min-jong said that the master really could kill this monster, although this scoundrel deserved it. The sheriff covered the girl's eyes with her hands and told Ruri not to watch. The beaten monster said that the man had only two reasons. Why does he keep beating him? Yoon Lee-jun was surprised. What did the monster mean by that? The protagonist calmed down and got to his feet. The bloodied monster lay motionless. The guy said he finally felt relieved. Min-jong said she never would have thought she'd see a high-rank B-class demon beaten to a pulp. And it happened without any special skills, just with bare hands. Min-jong asked who the master really was. The master noticed that the wounds on the girl's body had healed perfectly. She could even walk already. Min-jong said that something else was more important right now. Yoon Lee-jun told the sheriff not to worry too much about it. He had simply lent a helping hand to a regular customer. Yoon Lee-jun turned around and asked the sheriff. She already knows who he really is, doesn't she? He's just the owner of a local pub. As he left the room, the protagonist said that if the sheriff felt she owed him, she could come by more often and drink more. The master told the girl that it was time for them to go home. Min-jung remained sitting in the warehouse. By this point, she had accumulated many questions, but she couldn't find the answers. The girl continued to stay in the hospital room by her sick father's bed. The man woke up, opened his eyes, and saw his sleeping daughter beside him. Kim Min-soo told his daughter that her father had given her quite a scare. The girl woke up, saw her father awake, and threw herself into his arms. Iro and Lee Ruri ran as fast as they could in the given direction. Iro said they were almost there and that Ruri needed to hurry. Iro told Ruri to go in first. The girl replied that she understood. Iro watched the girl run away. Lee Ruri was already at the threshold of the next room. Iro turned around and saw a huge monster in front of her. Ruri asked, "Why did Iro stop? She should run away with her as fast as she can." Iro swallowed a pill and told Ruri to listen carefully. The mentor explained that if the girl were caught again, she would be treated worse than a lab rat. That's why she had to run away immediately, as far as possible. Then she would be able to live happily in freedom. Iro turned around and walked toward the monster. Lee Ruri looked at her mentor in fear. Iro broke the combination lock on the wall, and the door slammed shut. The woman said that if she blocked all the exits here, no one would be able to chase after the girl for a long time. Lee Ruri started crying and asked, "Won't Iro come with her?" Iro braced herself for the confrontation and said that Ruri was a smart girl and should already understand what was about to happen. The mentor repeated that the girl should run away quickly. She begged her to do so. Lee Ruri stood motionless for a moment, tears streaming down her cheeks. The girl rushed to the closed door and cried out that this wasn't supposed to happen. After all, Iro had promised they would run away together. Ruri continued to cry and repeat her mentor's pleas. Morning came. Yoon Lee-jun was still asleep in his bed, muttering in his sleep that it wouldn't fit him anymore. Ruri had been awake for a long time. She grabbed a pillow and threw it at her uncle's head. Yoon Lee-jun opened his eyes and called the girl a little rascal. Ruri wished her uncle a good morning. The master grabbed the pillow and rushed after the girl. He reminded her that he had already asked her not to throw pillows at a sleeping person's face. Lee Ruri was already 12 years old. The girl knew something about herself. It's a secret, but in reality she was born as a result of an experiment conducted by a secret organization. That was probably why she had been so sensitive to mana flows since birth. And her intuition was excellent. She always knew when something was brewing. When the gate spiraled out of control, it felt as if the air currents were shifting, or space was tearing at the seams. A message popped up on his smartphone saying the gate had opened again. A mana surge had been detected nearby. Lee Ruri said that the guy with the scars would be coming today. Yoon Lee-jun agreed and asked how the girl knew that. Ruri replied that it wasn't any of his business. Ever since Ruri arrived here, she had been a huge help and had honestly earned her keep. Iro had said that she always had to work for her keep in order to survive. The uncle she can rely on goes by the name of Yoon Lee-jun. She doesn't know how old he is. He doesn't like to talk about himself. Others often call him the pub owner. This man has a strange personality, but he's truly a good person. He likes to tease those around him, but he never crosses the line. Ruri has never seen him hurt anyone. Sometimes, when monsters or bandits appear nearby, he goes off alone to deal with them, and then returns. Once, Ruri secretly followed him and saw just how strong he is, just like a hero from a fairy tale. Recently, he even saved Sheriff Min-jung when she was in danger. Ruri noticed that she played a part in that too. Thanks to the potion she brought, her little sister's wounds healed without a trace. Ruri thought she really liked her uncle. Even though he grumbles every day, he always does whatever she asks. Lee Ruri called her uncle a softie. Yoon Lee-jun was indignant. Was the girl asking for a fight? Her uncle set the plate of food on the table and told her to be quiet while she ate. The girl thanked the master for the food. Ruri knew that her uncle never refused her anything. He grumbles that he doesn't like anything, but he does everything she asks. Plus, he's an excellent cook. His food was the most delicious she'd ever eaten. Ruri didn't understand why there was no menu in this pub. Maybe the owner was too lazy to make one. Ruri polished off her plate and thanked him for the meal. Yoon Lee-jun told the girl to soak all the dishes thoroughly in the sink now. Ruri ran over to the bar and sat down next to the other patrons. Min-jun and Kim Hwan looked at the girl. Ruri looked at the patrons and told the man that she wanted something to drink too, just like them. Yoon Lee-jun said she was still too young. She wouldn't be able to drink for another 10 years. Lee Ruri started demanding her drink and repeating that her uncle should make it for her. Yoon Lee-jun remarked that the girl was very noisy. Min-jun offered to make her a non-alcoholic cocktail. Yoon Lee-jun replied that it wasn't about the money. If they indulged her every whim, she might become too spoiled. Lee Ruri got offended, turned away, and said that her uncle was a real fool. Yoon Lee Jun scratched the back of his head and suggested that one glass really wouldn't hurt. The bartender said to add ice to the cocktail, fill it to the top with ginger ale, splash in a little grenadine, and garnish with a cherry. Yoon Lee Jun set the glass on the table and said the Shirley Temple was ready. It's the perfect cocktail for a child who wants to imitate adults. The bartender noted that Shirley Temple was the name of the greatest child star of 1930s Hollywood. As the only child at an adults-only party, she couldn't drink alcoholic cocktails. So the bartender created the first non-alcoholic cocktail in history just for her. Yoon Lee Jun added that no one knows for sure what was in that cocktail. Lee Ruri said it was the first cocktail she'd ever had. The girl tasted it and said it was very delicious. Sweet, with a slight tang. Yoon Lee Jun said he had just added a little syrup. Ruri could remember the taste and make it herself next time if she wanted to. The girl said that next time, she would definitely ask her uncle again. Min Jung remarked that no matter how much he explained now, he'd end up making it himself next time anyway. Lee Ruri said that her uncle was very kind. He always listened to her. The girl noted that today she had shared a secret about herself. People shouldn't know the whole truth about her. Otherwise, she'd have to leave, or they'd leave her to die on the street again. Lee Ruri put her finger to her lips and said it was a secret. She couldn't tell anyone about it. The gym with fitness equipment was full of light and fresh air. The guy was trying his hardest to lift the barbell off the ground. The young man strained, and he succeeded. He stood up to his full height, holding the barbell in his hands. The guy exclaimed that he had done it. He was extremely pleased with himself. A friend walked over and told him he did a great job. He'd said it would work out. The young man considered this a success, since he had deadlifted 120 kilograms. The athlete said he had to put in a lot of effort to achieve this. He started with an empty bar and worked out for a whole year, at least 3 times a week without breaks. Can we now consider him no longer a beginner? The guy heard someone ask if the spot next to the machine was free. He replied that it was free and that he would quickly remove the plates from the barbell. The girl said he shouldn't do that. That weight was just right for her. The young people were surprised when they saw the girl approach the barbell. The guy explained that the weight was indeed very heavy. The girl walked up to the barbell and gripped the bar with her hands. The stranger stood up straight and lifted the barbell. She performed the exercise with the same weight. The young people stood silently, their mouths agape. They couldn't believe the girl was able to lift such a weight. She repeated the exercise more than 10 times. Min Jung was focused and paid no attention to the onlookers. The girl thought, who is he anyway? How could anyone watch this and claim he was just a pub owner? A retired B rank? She couldn't even keep up with his movements. That kind of speed was at least A rank level. The restorative potion he gave her was definitely top quality. No intoxication. The next day, she trained without the slightest discomfort. That was the best proof? The potion was worth at least 5 million. Min Jong said that living in debt was definitely not her style. She already owed the master. How was she supposed to repay the debt now? Min Jong shouted that this was really annoying her. Who is he, really? The young people said she lifted 120 kilograms 38 times. It's beyond comprehension. She doesn't look like an ordinary girl at all. Could she really be a hunter? Min Jong answered the incoming call. Yonsan District, the Orc Quarter. The TV host said that one of the hottest topics was the alarmingly rapid spread of a new religion. It is known that a certain guild sponsors this organization's activities. There have been reports of a mass gathering of believers. The film crew has already left for the scene. Kim Hwan moved indifferently around the house, chewing gum as usual. A bloodied man sat motionless on the floor. He held an ID card in his hand. Kim Hwan coolly surveyed the crime scene. Min Jong, standing nearby, said that this man had been killed with particular brutality. Judging by the numerous stab wounds, the crime was committed in a fit of rage or out of burning hatred. Judging by the depth and nature of the wounds, the bones had been pierced right through. The suspect is a man who is highly skilled with a weapon and possesses immense strength. The sheriff added that if the criminal was able to defeat a D-rank hunter, he was clearly no ordinary civilian. It was possible that the criminal was a hunter himself. Min Jong asked if that meant Kim Hwan had called her because the victim was a hunter. The guy confirmed it. After all, if the criminal is a hunter, the police won't be much help here. Kim Hwan added that if he had a chance to get his sheriff friend to work, it would be a sin not to take it. The sheriff said that in that case, she'd buy Kim Hwan a round of drinks. Kim Hwan reported that the body was discovered today at 7 in the morning. It was found by an employee who came to open the building. This building belongs to the Tiger Guild. Minhan noted that, to start with, they had set up a perception suppression barrier so civilians wouldn't see the crime scene. No one needs rumors during an investigation, so only a small circle of people within the guild knows what happened. Min Jung noted that they had done everything correctly. Kim Hwan added that the guild leader had questioned his acquaintances. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. If we count only confirmed cases, there have already been 7. All the victims turned out to be C-rank hunters, or lower. The bodies were found near the orc settlement. The suspect's identity has not yet been established, but it is assumed that his rank is no lower than B rank. Min Jong noted that lately, whenever something happens, a B rank is always involved. Such hunters make up no more than 20% of the total. Where did so many of them suddenly come from? Could there have been a population explosion among the elite? Kim Hwan added that there was another oddity. It's not something people usually talk about. However, hunters often kill each other. After all, it's practically impossible to fully control the awakened. But in most cases, such killings happen in dungeons. Min Jong said that made sense. If you clean out the dungeon, the crime scene disappears without a trace. The guy noted that this criminal had deliberately chosen a crowded place for the killing. This suggests that he couldn't use a dungeon, or that he had some specific goal in mind. Min Jong suggested that he might have registered under a false name. Kim Hwan acknowledged that such a possibility existed. He might be one of those who had awakened abilities but hadn't registered with the association, or had intentionally falsified his rank information. Honestly, reporting one's abilities is every hunter's sacred duty. They are monitored as potential risk factors. The victim is Cho Min Hyuk, 21 years old, a D-rank hunter. 3 days ago, the guild summoned him and wanted to send him into the dungeon, but he never responded. From that day on, he was considered missing until his body was found here. Kim Hwan noted that as a melee fighter, he was in excellent physical condition. Everyone expected this rookie to achieve C rank, since he was the youngest on the team. Kim Hwan noted that if it were up to him, he would personally confront the criminal and deal with him. However, he had to enter the dungeon in 2 hours, so he was leaving the investigation in capable hands. Min Jong reminded him that the right to administer justice belongs to the sheriff. There would be a lot of trouble if ordinary hunters started taking the law into their own hands. Kim Hwan agreed and added that he was counting on her. The sheriff took photos and made the necessary notes. The evidence had been collected. Min Jong said she had written everything down, and now it was time to head out on a reconnaissance mission. The girl noted that strangers aren't welcome in the Orc City, so she couldn't manage without help. Min Jong decided to contact the priest Kim Dokbae. He knows the Orc district like the back of his hand and won't back down even to an awakened B rank. Yoon Lee Jun asked the sheriff if she wanted him to accompany her on her investigation in the Orc district. The answer was yes. The master said he refused and didn't even want to hear about it. Min Jong could go home. Yoon Lee Jun remarked that it would be too much trouble. Why should he do that? In the Orc quarter, the locals reported that there were no half-breeds who socialized with outsiders there. Min Jong noted that she hadn't expected any other answer. Yoon Lee Jun accompanied the girl on the investigation. Yoon Lee Jun got angry and told the orcs to spill everything they knew immediately. That way, they could part on good terms. The orcs were terrified. They realized they were facing a mad dog. This was the very one who was ready to tear apart anyone he didn't like. One of the orcs remarked that the mad dog never forgets those who've wronged him. However, they really didn't know anything. They'd been on a mission in distant lands for several days and had only returned to the orc settlement that morning. Yoon Lee Jun pointed out that if they didn't know anything, why were they stalling? It was just annoying. Min Jong was surprised. Do they really call the master Mad Dog? Yoon Lee Jun admitted that they do. The sheriff suggested continuing the search to see if anything suspicious was going on here. The pub owner said the girl was doing a great job. In that case, he could go home. They continued questioning the locals. Everyone had something to say, and the detectives kept moving on. Min Jong asked questions, and Yoon Lee Jun made threats when necessary. The investigation continued. The sheriff noted that they had been walking all over town for 4 hours now, but hadn't found out anything useful. Yoon Lee Jun remarked that he would have been better off staying home, drinking a beer, and watching the national song contest. At least he'd brought a bottle with him. Suddenly, Min Jong spotted an old acquaintance talking to one of the locals. The sheriff recognized him. It was Kim Dokbae. The priest and the local resident chatted and parted ways peacefully. The detectives moved closer. The priest hadn't noticed them yet. Kim Dokbae was deep in thought when someone behind him asked what was going on. Could there be some kind of trouble? Kim Dokbae turned around and was surprised to see Min Jong standing before him. The priest noted that the tavern owner had also arrived just in time. He assumed this was related to the reason the sheriff had come here. The young men saw a group of orcs hiding their faces under hoods. They were all looking in the same direction. The orcs were listening to a speaker. The leader declared that their people had once been a great race that ruled the boundless steppes. In those lands, milk and honey always flowed, and no one knew hunger. Security there was at a high level. Only the great god Orcus towered above them. Before him, all were equal. However, on one fateful day, their ancestors were drawn into this world through a spatial rift. The foreign land in which they suddenly found themselves was cramped. This land was foul-smelling and repulsive. The orc settlement on the outskirts of the country proved too small for the once proud people who had ruled the steppes. The orator said that they had accepted these meager lands. Even though they had not asked to be brought here, they were well aware that to the local people they were uninvited guests. Strength lies in generosity. The merciful orcs were the first to reach out to the locals, striving for harmony. The speaker asked, how did the people respond? They treated the orcs as an inferior race, despised them, and oppressed them in every way. The audience supported the speaker with cheers of approval. They were in solidarity. The priest and the investigators watched the gathering from around the corner. The sheriff noted that recently, a sect called Orcus had been gaining momentum, causing radical orcs to begin attacking hunters. Kim Dokbai noted that this was not exactly a sect, but rather the traditional faith of the people. Their people were named after the god Orcus. It was an ancient, deeply rooted faith. The priest added that they are from another world, so their culture differs greatly from that of humans. For them, battle has always been a matter of honor, and death was a sign of nobility. Their entire social structure is based on combat, for they are a warlike people. There is freedom of religion in this country. So the mere existence of such a religion is not a problem. The trouble is that it is also practiced by hot-headed orcs who are dissatisfied with current society. New laws have made life easier for this people. However, discrimination still thrives in society. Yoonli Jun noted that discrimination isn't going anywhere. People aren't even able to get along with one another. Min Jong said that this was surprising. Kim Dokbai is a follower of ancient beliefs, yet he decided to become a priest. How did he even come to this decision? Dokbai replied that he decided to become a priest because orcs are outsiders in this country. To find common ground with the indigenous population, he felt it necessary to study their main cultural traditions and embrace them. Yoonli Jun noted that religion is the most widespread cultural layer in the entire world. Dokbai's decision to become the world's first orc priest was an attempt to build bridges for the cultural integration of humans and orcs. Kim Dokbai said the master was absolutely right. Min Jung asked, why make things so complicated? We could just have a drink together and become friends. Kim Dokbai said the sheriff was right. It would be great if all problems could be solved that way. Yoonli Jun suggested they go find out who was brave enough to attack the hunters. The speaker continued his speech, urging everyone to remember the contempt in people's eyes and the endless discrimination that orcs face in society. The audience once again supported the speaker with cheers of approval. The speaker said that thanks to their innate strength, they work for 3 people, but still remain only temporary workers. They are paid half as much as humans for this work. The orc asked, would his brothers really just sit back and tolerate this injustice? The audience raised their hands and cheered the speaker on once more. Yoonli Jun noticed that this crowd even used a battle cry. Apparently, secret meetings weren't popular among them. The priest said that if they tried to match the vague descriptions of the criminal, it would be hard to figure anything out. Everyone here was wearing hoods. Min Jong stepped out of hiding and said that in situations like this, it's easier and faster to deal with everything head-on. She decided to go first, while her companions were to watch the crowd's reaction and look for anyone suspicious. The sheriff stood in a prominent spot and asked everyone for a moment of their attention. Min Jong showed her badge, introduced herself as the sheriff, and stated that she was investigating an incident that had occurred nearby. She would need everyone's cooperation. The local orcs were surprised. Isn't a sheriff a hunter's investigator? What is a sheriff doing here? One of the orcs became overly agitated and tried to leave the area. Yoonli Jun noticed this and said that someone was trying to escape. Min Jong noticed this too and decided to pursue the fugitive. The sheriff shouted for the orc to stop immediately and present his identification documents. The orc continued to run. The sheriff shouted that he needed to be caught, and Yoonli Jun also rushed after him. Min Jong, pushing the orcs aside, quickly ran after the fleeing figure. The orator silently watched the scene unfold. He hadn't expected to see the priest here, accompanied by people. The priest also looked intently into the orator's eyes. It was Park Chunbei. Chunbei, looking at the priest, called out his name loudly, Kim Dokbai. Minjong grabbed the priest by the shoulder and asked what he was doing and why he had stopped, since they might lose the fugitive that way. The priest agreed and said he was on her side. Dokbae turned around and also ran after the fugitive. The fugitive panicked. Had he been caught because he'd left too many traces? He should have stopped after the first 2 attempts. The orc hid around the corner and decided that now they wouldn't find him. However, Yoon Lee-jun suddenly appeared behind him. The orc hadn't seen him yet and thought that no one would find him in his own neighborhood. Yoon Lee-jun asked the fugitive, "Did everyone really scatter?" The orc was frightened and backed away. The master grabbed the fugitive by the collar and held him so he wouldn't run away again. Dokbae and Minjong also arrived and saw that the master had caught him. The protagonist said it wasn't difficult. He hadn't even expected it to go so smoothly. The priest looked at the fugitive and recognized him. It was Chunja. The orc screamed that he was wrong and wouldn't do it again. Dokbae expressed doubt that this was the criminal. "He's just a kid. He couldn't even handle an F-rank hunter." Minjong was surprised. Then why was he running away? Chunja was surprised. Weren't these people here because he'd pickpocketed some drunken hunters on the street? Yoon Lee-jun asked the priest if he had sent the child home. Dokbae confirmed this and added that he had given him a good scolding and sent him on his way. The priest said he would fully compensate for the damage caused. Minjong agreed. For a priest's salary, it was mere pocket change. Dokbae objected, saying that while he earned little as a priest, he had other sources of income, so everything was fine. The priest added that the Orc district doesn't receive support from hunters, and they have to deal with the gates on their own. Yoon Lee-jun noted that hunters used to help the locals. However, due to discrimination and endless complaints, the consequences became dire. As a result, the Orcs decided to deal with the gates on their own, and the Hunters Association welcomed this decision with open arms. Kim Dokbae noted that the Vatican even issued him a personal permit to clear the gates. But if the gates become too large, he has to call on the Hunters Association for help. Dokbae acknowledged that orcs are a powerful race. They are considered adults at 14, and an adult orc is as strong as a D-rank hunter. The priest added that, judging by the sheriff's account, the suspect must be at least B-rank. Even among orcs, there are few like that. Minjong asked if there was anyone in mind. The priest recalled the orator, Park Chung-bai, and said he had one suitable candidate. He is strong enough to hunt a B-rank hunter and harbors a deep hostility toward humans. Minjong suggested that they now knew which direction to take their investigation. But how should they proceed? It was unlikely the suspect would confess if they simply walked up and asked. Yoon Lee-jun stated that in moments like this, they needed bait. The boy holding sweets said he wanted to hurry back and treat his friends to gifts from the orcs. It was C-rank hunter Nahong-seok. The boy said these snacks were very filling and everyone would love them. Why hadn't he known about such treats until now? A stranger in a hood secretly followed the boy. The pursuer held a heavy adjustable wrench in his hand. The boy mused aloud that he should stop by a store on the way and pick up another drink. The distance between the boy and his pursuer was closing. Hong-seok still didn't suspect a thing. Suddenly, the hunter heard footsteps behind him and trembled with fear. Nahong-seok stopped and listened. Someone was approaching. The boy turned around and looked around in surprise. There was no one behind him, only a deserted street lit by the moon and a street lamp. Hong-seok decided he must have imagined it. But the pursuer appeared from the other side and was already swinging a wrench. At the last moment, Hong-seok managed to dodge and jumped aside. The hunter fell to the ground, spilling the contents of the bag, and looked fearfully at the villain's weapon. Hong-seok ran off, shouting that he was being chased. The villain rushed after the boy, who continued to call for help as he ran. Hong-seok thought that if he hadn't cast a protective spell as his master had instructed, he would surely have died. But where was his master? The hunter turned the corner and realized he had reached a dead end. There was nowhere left to run. The villain caught up to the boy and said he was quite nimble. However, this is where you'll have to say goodbye to life, he added. The hooded criminal claimed that the boy had been snooping around the area for about 2 weeks. Could he be looking for a way to attack the orcs? Hong-seok admitted that it was a culinary tour. The orc replied that he didn't believe him. The young man insisted he was telling the absolute truth. He had nothing to hide. The orc swung the wrench again. The man has only himself to blame for defiling the atmosphere of this neighborhood with his presence. The young man covered his face with his hands and screamed loudly for someone to save him. Kim Dokbae suddenly appeared. He grabbed the criminal's weapon and prevented the attack. The priest saw the attacker and said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The attacker turned out to be Park Chun-bae. The priest noted that he had been doubtful at first, but it really was Park Chun-bae. Kim Dokbae pointed out that an adjustable wrench was a tool for repairs, not for attacking people. Park Chung-bae shouted, Whoever holds this wrench in their hands decides how to use it. The criminal knocked his opponent to the ground and swung his leg to strike. Park Chung-bae thought that if this novice hunter was a decoy, then the sheriff's reinforcements might be nearby. The villain realized he was alone, and his enemies were many. Before the situation turned against him, he needed to get out of there quickly and assess the situation. The priest gave chase. He didn't want to let the criminal get away. Suddenly, the sheriff and the tavern owner appeared in Park Chun-bae's path. Yoon Lee-jun asked where the guy was in such a hurry to go. Min-jong declared that she had finally caught him. Dok-bae immediately ran up and kicked the fugitive. The priest added that now this guy wouldn't be able to escape. Bystanders watched as the two orcs settled their differences. Min-jong noted that he had only taken the bait after 2 weeks. Yoon Lee-jun added that this was because the orc district had drawn the sheriff's close attention, and they had to be cautious. Hong Sok announced that his mission was complete. The sheriff thanked the hunter and admitted that it had been difficult for her to act as bait. Hong Sok remarked that he was glad to help and was willing to do so in the future. Hong Sok said that thanks to the barrier the master had taught him to set up, he had been at ease. Even if a powerful enemy had appeared, the civilians would not have been harmed. The protagonist noted Hong Sok's remarkable sensitivity to mana. He would make an outstanding mage. The young hunter admitted that he really hoped so, since he also wanted to become an S-rank hunter. Hong Sok remarked that he had been scared at first in the orc district, but despite their fearsome appearance, everyone there was very kind. He loved it immensely and treated himself to a little culinary tour. The pork soup turned out to be especially delicious, and there were countless ways to prepare it there. Hong Sok added that he especially liked a bowl of hot soup with a shot of soju. Yoon Lee-jun thought that the combination of soup and soju sounded simply amazing. The hunter glanced at his watch and said it was almost time for a hunting raid. He asked the master if he could leave. Yoon Lee-jun said the guy was free to go and added that the establishment would provide him with drinks for a month on the house. Hong Sok was especially pleased with that last remark. He'd be able to save money on drinks. The protagonist waved to the guy and wished him a safe trip home. Min-jong noted that this guy was very young, yet already a hunter. Yoon Lee-jun said that appearances were deceiving. He was already 26 years old. The sheriff was surprised. She had thought the guy was still in high school. The master admitted that he did indeed have a childlike face. Min-jung was even more surprised. Could the master really be saying that Hong Seok is the same age as Kim Dok-bae? Yet his skin is as soft as a baby's. What could be the secret? The sheriff surmised that the hunter possessed the eternal youth ability. She had to find out the secret behind that flawless skin at all costs. Yoon Lee-jun looked at the fighting orcs and thought that all that remained was to apprehend the criminal. The orcs fought fiercely, parrying each other's blows again and again. Kim Dok-bae and Park Chun-bae struck each other simultaneously, and when their fists collided, a massive burst of excess energy was released. The opponents were sent flying in different directions but managed to stay on their feet. The standoff continued. The priest asked, "Could it be that the serial killer who mercilessly slaughtered the hunters was Park Chun-bae?" Chun-bae replied that he wanted to clarify something. His targets were only the humans among the hunters. Dok-bae asked, "Why did he do that?" Chun-bae was surprised. Had the priest still not understood? Orcs are those who were once the center of the universe. Now they seem like trash in the eyes of humans. In body, spirit, and honor, they are noble beings, incomparable to pitiful humans. Chun-bae noted that a single orc was equal in strength to 50 human men. They stood on a completely different level of development than humans. There was not a single reason why they could not lead this world and rule over all. Dok-bae said, "So Chung-bae was single-handedly exterminating hunters to reduce their numbers before the war. Orcs are few, while humans are countless. Human hunters are no weaker than orcs." Chun-bae asked, "Is the priest really a defeatist? Does he want the orcs to bow their heads to humans for centuries to come?" Kim Dok-bae declared that this was not what he meant at all. Chun-bae had hoped the priest would become a great leader who would lead all the orcs. After all, he was the 17th descendant of their lineage, was strong, and had proven time and again that he was worthy of being a leader. The strongest blood of the orc tribe's warriors flows through the priest's veins. Yet he betrayed those expectations by becoming a devout fanatic. It is a great disgrace. Does he not fear the moment when, after death, he will stand before the god Orcus? Dok-bae said that for the sake of saving their people, Chun-bae must face the truth. They are merely a minority in a world populated by humans. The wise decision would be to coexist peacefully with them, not to fight. Chun-bae remarked that these were all empty words. What future and what hope could they expect by betraying their roots? The priest said he had hoped in vain that his brother would understand. Dubei added that Chunbei was right. If all the cups they had drained together hadn't opened his brother's heart, then nothing would change now. Park Chung-bae threw off his cloak and said the priest was talking too much. He made it clear that the fight would continue. Park Chun-bae added that there was no point in talking anymore. The villain added that from now on, they would communicate only with their fists. Dokbae replied that if it couldn't be avoided, then so be it. The priest remarked that he had no choice but to accept it, as befits a warrior. He was ready to fight one-on-one. The priest also took off his cloak and prepared to continue the confrontation. Kim Dokbae called his opponent his brother and added that he was challenging him to a duel of honor, made, a one-on-one battle, a form of dialogue that orcs resort to as a last resort when they reach an impasse. A sacred battle in which each stakes their beliefs, ideals, and justice. For orcs, the victor's word is the ultimate truth. The loser is obliged to submit unquestioningly to the victor's will. However, if a warrior cannot accept such an outcome, he has only one path left: to fight to the very end. Dokbae struck his opponent's jaw with all his might. Chunbei responded in kind. The rivals stood facing each other again, exchanging blows. Then their legs came into play. However, they knew each other well and skillfully blocked the attacks. Chunbei shouted that this time the priest would meet his end and swung his leg to strike. The opponents moved from corner to corner of the room, chasing each other and retreating for counterattacks. Chunbei said that all the priest knew how to do was retreat. He should face his opponent like a real man. The criminal asked, where had the once proud warrior gone? Had he really become a weakling after becoming a priest? Chunbei reminded him that they had sworn to each other in their youth that they would devote their lives to their people. So does the oath they made, clinking cups in their youth, mean nothing at all? Chunbei continued to strike and said he was waiting for an answer from his brother. Perhaps that oath had been a lie? Dokbae replied that it wasn't a lie. His desire to devote his life to the orcs was still strong, and even now, he didn't think any differently. Chunbei declared that it was all a lie. Was his brother really saying that he had done everything for the orcs? Chunbei added that all the priest does is wag his tail in front of people like a beaten dog. For a moment, the rivals found themselves in opposite corners of the room. This gave them a chance to catch their breath. Chunbei remarked that his opponent was trampling on the honor of the orcs without ever having fought a single battle, as befits a true warrior. Dokbae said that the outcome was obvious. Does meeting one's end after an exhausting battle really mean being a warrior? The rivals continued to strike each other with renewed vigor. Chunbei began spitting blood. Dokbae repeated that he was doing all this for the orcs. However, his brother refused to acknowledge it, no matter how much he explained. The priest reminded him that Chunbei himself had said they no longer needed words. Dokbae declared that the victor would judge the righteousness of each of their actions. Minjong and Yoon Lee-jun silently watched the battle, as if it were an Indian action movie with lots of dialogue and lots of blows. The only thing missing was the music. Minjong asked the master, were they really just going to stand there and watch? Yoon Lee-jun remarked that it was better not to interfere right now. For orcs, a duel is a sacred ritual. Through it, they determine who is right and who is wrong. Anyone who dares to interfere will become the sworn enemy of all orcs. The sheriff remarked that these words reminded her of a certain card game. Yoon Lee-jun agreed that there was some similarity. The master asked, could the sheriff see Dokbae's body? There wasn't a single scar on it. Yoon Lee-jun noted that this orc might not have cleared every dungeon, but he had definitely participated in raids on A-rank gates. The fact that there wasn't a single scar left on his body spoke to his incredible strength. Yoon Lee-jun told the sheriff not to worry. Even among orcs, strong men like Dokbae are few and far between. The girl was surprised. Was Dokbae really that strong? Chunbei thought that for the sake of the orcs, he had fought again and again, becoming much stronger than before. Why then could he still not defeat Dokbae? Power and triumph. Wasn't such glory destined for a noble warrior chosen by Orcus himself? Chunbei thought, could it be that, as a warrior, he was inferior to his rival? A pitiful lackey who had fallen for the faith of men? Park Chunbei refused to accept this. He said that Orcus had long since renounced them all. By the time he left the world of the orcs, no one could deny it anymore. It is not worth clinging to a false god for the sake of all orcs. Chunbei said that his rival must extend his hand to him and gain great power. Then, together, they would defeat that vile traitor who had blocked his brother's path. That traitor must be torn into a billion tiny pieces so that it causes him pain. He must become merely a stepping stone on the path to a bright future. Park Chunbei's body began to transform, his eyes flashing brightly. Park Chun-bai turned into a monster, which immediately attacked the priest. The monster resembled the one that had previously possessed Ryu So-hyung, and the one that had appeared in the tavern. There was something they had in common. After another blow, the priest was sent flying far backward. The monster was much stronger than Chung-bai in his original form. Yoon Lee-jun and Min-jun immediately realized that this was the demonization mode. The sheriff noticed that this energy was clearly above A rank. Kim Dok-bae raised his head and asked, "What's with my brother's expression? He must have swallowed something wrong?" The priest thought, could it be that, in the very midst of the sacred Medi, his brother had allowed some demonic filth to consume him? The demon, its eyes flashing, continued to growl furiously and display excessive aggression. Dok-bae called his opponent a foolish scoundrel. Interfering in the mat day was a betrayal of military honor. Wasn't he betraying his very essence as an orc by doing this? The priest asked, where was his brother's vaunted pride? Kim Dok-bae delivered his verdict. If the opponent had resorted to such tactics, then he was a true coward. The priest gathered momentum, swung, and landed another punch to the jaw. A series of relentless blows followed, yet the monster remained on his feet. He simply laughed in response. The monster counterattacked, and the priest was sent flying to the side again, landing on one knee. Dok-bae declared that his opponent, who had once preached about a warrior's honor, had turned into a monster incapable of even speaking coherently. Is this pitiful appearance and his actions truly what he wanted? Thanks to his transformation into a demon, Park Chung-bae's strength and speed had increased to incredible limits. He was now roughly A rank. The priest could barely keep up with his attacks. But there was one major problem: his absurd resilience. Nothing phases him, no matter how many blows he takes. If they keep trading blows, Dok-bae will be the only one to run out of steam in the end. The priest pondered what to do in this situation. Maybe try to wear him down by continuing to dodge his attacks? If he's grown so much in size, his stamina must have decreased, so that might work. Another option was to go all out and strike at a single point. If he concentrated all his blows in one spot, he might be able to pierce through that sturdy armor. Dok-bae decided that these were all just empty hopes. With so little information, it was impossible to find the right solution right away. The priest decided he would do everything in his power. Min-jung asked once again, were they really just going to stand there and watch? After all, Chung-bai had already turned into a demon. The situation had become exponentially more dangerous. Judging by the aura, it was an A-rank demon. Yoon Lee-jun admitted that this was all a hassle, but he hadn't known that his opponent would become a demon. The sheriff asked again, what should we do? The protagonist said that if the priest had challenged his opponent to a one-on-one duel, he'd rather bite his tongue off than accept anyone's help. Orcs are very stubborn. Demonic energy usually can't just swallow them up like that. Could it be that the guy had been exposed to demonic energy for too long? Suddenly, a massive reinforced concrete structure, part of the building, began to collapse, posing a threat. However, our hero reacted in time. With a confident movement of his hand, he grabbed the structure and averted the danger. At the same time, he said that turning into a demon is detrimental to one's sanity. Sanity is dulled in the process, so losing the ability to speak or endlessly repeating catchy phrases is common. Yoon Lee-jun added, the greater the drawbacks, the greater the advantages. In exchange for a shorter lifespan upon demonization, the creature gains the strength to stand on equal footing with a hunter. The exact cause of demonization has not yet been established. However, the main factors include mana poisoning, erosion of demonic energy, and a conflict of foreign forces within the body. If an orc capable of hunting B-rank masters undergoes such a transformation into a demon, its power will be beyond measure. At the same time, it takes virtually no damage. Analyzing the situation, the protagonist came to the conclusion that he needed to intervene. The monster shoved his opponent, and he began to fall from the top floor straight down. After the fall, people rushed over to the priest. The sheriff asked, how is Dok-bae feeling? The priest stood up and replied that he was fine. Min-jung noticed that he was covered in wounds. His entire body was injured. Kim Dok-bae told the master not to intervene under any circumstances. After all, this was a one-on-one duel. The priest added that if anyone interfered in the battle, he wouldn't even forgive him. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he understood everything and fell silent. Dok-bae thanked the master for his understanding and added that this was extremely important to him. Kim Dok-bae addressed the monster, called him by name, and reminded him that he was his brother. Dok-bae remarked, if Chun-bae truly decided to defeat him this way, he would risk everything to stop his brother. The priest said that standing before him was not just some demon, but a battle-hardened warrior. Chun-bae must remember who he is. He must remember the moment when they first clinked glasses and made a vow. The young orcs were thrown out onto the street and told to leave immediately. The cook remarked, "If people find out that filthy orcs are showing up here, all the customers will scatter in an instant." Young Kim Dokbae replied that they were customers too and had money. The cook snapped, "An orc has no right to call himself a customer. He won't accept this money. Besides, it's probably counterfeit." Park Chun-bae suggested to his friend that they just leave. Apparently, today wasn't their day. Dokbae felt down. After all, they hadn't done anything wrong. Why were they being treated this way? Chun-bae suggested they have a drink. Dokbae asked in surprise what that was all about. Chung-bae remarked that on a lousy day like this, they simply had to have a drink. He added, "That's exactly what he meant to say, but they aren't allowed to drink alcohol until they're adults. That's why he brought milk. It looks like Macaulay." The young orc suggested they pretend it was alcohol and drain their cups. After that, they'd be able to chase away their melancholy. Dokpa laughed. "My friend is talking nonsense." The friends declared that from now on, these would be their brothers' cups. Until the day the last cup in this world is broken, they would live for their orc brothers. Chun-bae added that he was ready to give his life for his brother at any moment. Kim Dokbae noted that his brother had once been kinder to people than he himself was. They had learned a great deal from one another, making up for what each lacked. The priest asked how his brother had become such a terrifying monster, capable of piercing his own brother's heart without hesitation. Dokbae added that Chung-bae had even rejected the honor of an orc, ready to tear him to pieces. The monster continued to growl aggressively, his eyes still gleaming. The body of the priest, Kim Dokbae, lay on the rubble of a brick wall. With his last ounce of strength, Dokbae sat up and looked at the enormous monster. The priest reminded him that a true orc warrior would never succumb to the influence of demonic energy, even if things had turned out this way. Dokbae told his brother that he believed in him. He was a great warrior with whom they had drunk from the same cup. The priest added that he was proud that Chung-bae was his brother. He knew that Chung-bae would never desecrate the sacred duel. Dokbae shouted that his brother must remember the moment when they sealed their bond with the cups of brotherhood. The monster continued to growl, baring its teeth. Its eyes still glowed. The sheriff shouted for the monster to stop immediately. Yoon Lee-jun took a coin out of his pocket and said he could no longer just stand by and watch. Let the priest hate him for interfering in the duel. The protagonist aimed the coin at the monster. He declared, if he didn't intervene right now, Kim Dokbae would surely die. The coin flew into the monster's body, and blood flowed from the wound. Chun-bae shouted that he was a great orc warrior and gave his name. He didn't realize what he was doing, while Dokbae continued to fight back. The monster said that Kim Dokbae was a great warrior whom he had once envied, and a childhood friend with whom they had once forged a bond of friendship. Chun-bae added that his friend had recently begun preaching incomprehensible ideals, calling for peace between orcs and humans. That was what drove a wedge between them. However, despite this, Dokbae is dearer to him than anyone else in the world. No one can replace him. Why then is he fighting this friend? Park Chun-bae said that now he remembered they had a duel. But how did it come to this? No matter how hard he tried to remember, he couldn't figure it out. Kim Dokbae wondered, what was his brother saying right now? Did Chung-bae just call him by name? Kim Dokbae said with all seriousness that he believed in his brother. Chun-bae looked at his reflection in the broken glass and saw not himself, but a monster. Did he really look like that now? Dokbae urged his brother once more to recall the moment when they had sealed their friendship with cups. At that moment, Park Chun-bae truly remembered the past. The monster still stood there, bleeding from the wound caused by the coin. The monster screamed that he was the great orc warrior, Park Chun-bae. The transformation began to reverse. The priest declared that his brother had finally come to his senses. Chun-bae realized he had regained his senses. It hadn't been easy. Even though a rift had formed between them, he had done something an orc warrior should never have done. Chun-bae admitted that he had shown disrespect in the sacred duel and asked his brother for forgiveness. Dokbae replied that he accepted the apology and understood. It had been nothing more than an unfortunate misunderstanding. Chun-bae said that was excellent and suggested they continue the duel. Dokbae agreed. The confrontation continued. Minjong exclaimed that this was madness. Were they really going to fight like this? Yoon Lee-jun agreed with the sheriff. The protagonist added that it really was madness. However, such is the life of orcs. The nearest surveillance camera was operational and recording everything that was happening. The girl watching the scene was surprised. Why had the demon transformation dissipated? But this orc was interesting to watch, just a little more, and he would have become an S-rank demon. She sat in the office in front of the monitors and couldn't understand how the brainwashing could have failed, since she had spent so much time infecting this orc. The girl started to freak out and declared that this was why she hated orcs. The office floor was littered with the mangled bodies of security personnel. She said she was no longer interested in the original plan. Maybe she should just kill them all? Meanwhile, the orcs continued to settle their differences and demonstrate their strength to one another. As a result of the confrontation, Kim Dokbae said he had managed to hold his ground. Victory in the duel was proof that his convictions were correct. Dokbae added to his brother that he was giving this order not as a priest, but as the successor to the great leader. His crimes were grave. The people would not forgive them so easily. He must accept his guilt and suffer the punishment he deserved. The priest added that when his brother is ready, he must return as a true orc and devote the rest of his days to serving others and atonement. Dokbae noted that this would not wash away all his sins, but there would surely be a place for him among the hunters. The priest couldn't hold himself up and also fell to the ground. The two orcs, having lost their strength, lay side by side. Minjong couldn't take it anymore and rushed over to Kim Dokbae. Yoon Lee-jun remarked that everything here had already been settled. The protagonist looked at the surveillance camera and added that they had an uninvited guest. The girl behind the monitors saw the face on the screen and wondered, "Who is that?" Yoon Lee-jun took aim with the coin and told the observer to stop staring at him. It was definitely annoying him. The shot was accurate. The coin struck the surveillance camera with the speed of a bullet. The camera was destroyed and shattered into tiny pieces. The girl in the security room lost the feed. The image disappeared from the monitors. She was outraged. What just happened? The stranger said she liked this guy, but who was he? She decided to get her hands on him. The girl added that after she had her fun, she would slowly tear him to pieces and watch him scream in pain. A TV announcer reported that the serial killer had finally been apprehended. It turned out to be a certain Mr. Pak, who had been terrorizing the entire neighborhood. Mr. Pak was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars and assist in the elimination of the gates. The C-rank hunter watched the report on his smartphone and asked, "Is the guy really claiming he had a hand in this?" Hong Sok replied that it was all true. Without him, they would never have caught the criminal. The master confirmed these words. They had tracked down the criminal only thanks to Hong Sok. Yoon Lee-jun prepared coffee liqueur with milk and an old-fashioned for the clients. The patrons were satisfied. Hong Sok asked, "It's free for me, right?" The pub owner confirmed this and added that the young hunter could order whatever he wanted. Hong Seok said he loves coffee liqueur because it's always delicious. It's real coffee milk, but only for adults. Jin-ho remarked that the old-fashioned is truly a classic, a bittersweet taste and a pleasant strength. The owner was glad that the visitors enjoyed the drinks. Lee Ruri saw the visitors and was surprised. One of them was just a child. Was it really okay for him to drink something like that? Hong Sok got angry and said the girl was up to her old tricks again. He was already 26 years old. The hunter showed his ID. Ruri said the document was fake. The ink had already faded. The girl added that it looked like a cheap fake. Hong Sok kept complaining and calling the girl names, since she was deliberately trying to get under his skin. Ruri told her uncle that she wanted something tasty too. Yoon Lee-jun made a cocktail and said it looked almost the same but would taste much better to a child. Lee Ruri sat down next to him and began to drink her milkshake. The girl declared that it was sweet and delicious. Real coffee milk. Kim Jin-ho remarked that the girl was very cute. Hong Seok added that he also loved that drink when he was a child. Hong Seok asked if everyone had returned from the dungeon safe and sound. Jin-ho replied that it had been a reconnaissance mission. Everything went smoothly and without serious injuries. Hong Seok remarked that the last time he went into the dungeon with a party, one hunter had died. He was a rookie from another guild. They hadn't met before. Hong Seok added that there hadn't been any dangerous moments, but for the rookie, it was his first raid. The guy panicked and couldn't follow the commander's orders. Jin-ho admitted that it was sad. Hong Sok added that if that hunter had just obeyed orders, he would have come out without a single scratch. When newbies die because of their own stupidity, there's only one thought in your head. It's a shame, even though it could have been avoided. Jin-ho noted that dungeon reconnaissance is now conducted very thoroughly. Barring exceptional cases, almost everyone returns alive. Jin-ho noted that even accounting for the deaths of scouts in gates with high volatility and in dangerous dungeons, the average survival rate exceeds 90%. This is due to the fact that groups of hunters whose strength far exceeds the gate's level are specifically sent on raids. Jin-ho added that he had seen others die many times and seemed to have grown accustomed to it. Hong Seok stated that he, too, feels almost nothing anymore. The hunter suggested that the incident in the first battle after entering the dungeon happened because they simply hadn't had time to properly bond. But most likely, he really had just gotten used to the deaths of others. That is the essence of a hunter's work. Hongsuk asked, "Wasn't the master a hunter once too?" Ruri asked for another cocktail, but the master refused. Hongsuk replied that he had indeed been a hunter before. The guests asked what it was like to work back then. Was the atmosphere very different from today's? Yoon Jun thought for a moment and replied that the atmosphere was only slightly different. A bloodthirsty monster roamed the city streets, hunting people and mercilessly destroying them. A man saw the monster and trembled with fear. He even froze in place. The monster lifted its victim and opened its enormous maw. The man with a sword in his hand was ready to fight. The man with the sword saw the monster swallow its victim and became even more terrified. The monster turned and approached the armed man. The man was terrified and covered his face with his hand. But at that moment, the monster was cut in two. A hunter appeared nearby and asked what the guy was doing there. The hunter reminded him that he had told him before. If the young man wanted to survive, he had to act first and ask questions later. The young man, his eyes wide with fear, told the hunter that danger was approaching from behind. Behind the hunter, Yoon Jun, a huge monster appeared. Suddenly, the monster was destroyed. Another person came to the rescue. Yoon Jun said it had been done very slowly. He had almost been hit. The group leader, Bae Cheol-gu, remarked that it wasn't that he was slow, but that Yoon Jun was too fast. The young man was surprised. Standing before him was the very man who destroys hundreds of monsters with his bare hands. It was the Guardian, Bae Cheol-gu. Yoon Jun told the Guardian that this newcomer was his fan. Cheol-gu replied that things would have been different if Yoon Jun hadn't stopped promoting himself. Yoon Jun remarked that this wasn't his style. He was concerned with something entirely different. He wants to clear as many dungeons as possible and do it quickly so he can get just a little closer to his daughter. Baek Cheol-gu remarked that Yoon Jun says this as if he truly enjoys it. Yoon Jun replied that, in any case, they need to clear out these monsters before even more of them show up. Swinging his sword, Yoon Jun charged at the huge monsters, claiming he would turn this trifle into mincemeat. The young hunter watched the professional's actions with his mouth agape. Later, he told his friends how the boss had sliced the monsters to pieces with a single sword, while the guard had fought with his fists. Not a single monster could stand up to them. Together, they took down more than 20 monsters without getting a single scratch. The group's leader, Kim Hong, said their combat skills deserved great respect. The group's mage, Jegul Hyun, remarked that this guy was telling the story as if he'd been right in the thick of things, even though he'd just been standing on the sidelines. Kim Hong added that when you witness a situation like that firsthand, your emotions run wild. They felt the same way at first. Just surviving while chasing those monsters was an achievement in itself. The friends said that the main thing is to stay alive and have a beer together. Yoon Jun took a few swigs of liquor from a flask and said that was just what he needed. There's nothing better than a drink after a shift. Baek Cheol-gu declined the drink and said he doesn't drink. The protagonist pointed out that it was fruit soju. He had found the last bottle in the store. In response to a question, Cheol-gu said there were currently 13 survivors. Yoon Jun noted that that wasn't bad, but Cheol-gu was surprised. What does not bad mean? When they entered the gate, there were 86 of them. 73 died during the sweep. Can that really be called not bad? Yoon Jun remarked that there was nothing to be done about it. Who could have known that a B-rank gate would suddenly mutate into an A-rank gate? The protagonist added that, one way or another, the core of the raid had survived, and the mop-up was almost complete. Baek Cheol-gu acknowledged that his partner was right. Statistically speaking, everything was correct. Cheol-gu noted that the hunter's survival rate was too low. At this rate, all the hunters would soon die, and the world would be left defenseless. Yoon Jun remarked that he was already working at full capacity, but that was the current situation, and there was nothing to be done about it. Cheol-gu countered that if they reorganized the system properly, they could significantly increase survival rates. The main problem is that newbies and veterans are thrown into the same place without any training. If hunters are divided by rank and forces are properly allocated, the result will be different. Baek Cheol-gu urged them to stop blindly rushing in to clear dungeons. They need to take a break, systematize everything, and carry out a reorganization. Yoon Jun remarked that he couldn't do that. He needed to move on because So-ah was waiting for him. Cheol-gu asked, "Is she really waiting?" Yoon Jun got angry. What exactly does his interlocutor mean by that? Cheol-gu noticed that at some point, Yoon Jun had started repeating that name over and over. He kept insisting that he had to find his daughter, but Cheolgu has known him for ages and has never once seen this child. Cheolgu added that Yoon Lee-jun didn't even have a photo of his daughter. The Guardian noted that he only knew of her existence from Yoon Lee-jun's words. It's madness to search for a child by combing through all these gates and dungeons. The guard asked if this girl even existed. Yoon Lee-jun grabbed his companion and pinned him against the wall. The protagonist punched the wall and it was completely covered in cracks. After the next blow, the wall collapsed. Yoon Lee-jun grabbed Cheolgu by the chest and told him to try repeating those words again. Baek Cheolgu demanded that Yoon Lee-jun take his hand off. Suddenly, another person appeared in the room. The young men turned around. The man told them to calm down. He had already thought a monster had attacked them. Yoon Lee-jun, still holding the guard, continued to stare intently at him. The hunter told the boss that he suggested they take a look at what the newcomer had found. The newcomer was holding several bottles of wine. He remembered that the guard had mentioned his love for wine. Yoon So-hyun noted that he had found a whole case of that wine. Jung-ho had already chilled it with his magic. Yoon Lee-jun acknowledged that Riesling was Cheolgu's favorite wine. Cheolgu confirmed that it was indeed good wine, and moreover, Orpheon. The newcomer said there were no glasses, but drinking such wine straight from the bottle was also fun. It gave it a special vibe. Yoon Lee-jun noted that even without a glass you can experience the full range of flavors if you hold the wine in your mouth for a moment. The protagonist handed the bottle of wine to the guard and said he had spoken out of turn, so he apologized. Cheolgu apologized for bringing up a personal topic. The group of hunters gathered around the campfire and happily drank the wine they had found. The monster roared loudly and swiped at the hunter with its paw. A large pool of blood appeared. The surviving hunters grabbed their weapons and began fending off the monsters attacking them. Baek Cheolgu saw the rookie's body lying in a pool of blood and screamed in rage. One day, the heavens split open. Armed monsters emerged from the other world. The world they once knew collapsed overnight. Yoon Lee-jun, clearing the rubble of the destroyed building, told Cheolgu to get out of there. It was then that the Guardian met the hope of the entire world, a hero who single-handedly exterminated monsters and saved people's lives. The first hunter he saw with his own eyes, Yoon Lee-jun. As if appearing from a new world, he performed feats that humans dared not even dream of. As if by fate, Baek Cheolgu decided to face the end of the world shoulder to shoulder with this hero. Cheolgu was not alone. Like moths flying toward a blinding light, countless people he had saved also wished to walk hand in hand with him. However, to his great regret, he was strong, unlike the rest. There were many who wished to become his comrades, but there was no less death around him. Fortunately, Baek Cheolgu had found his strength. Though he wasn't as strong as Yoon Lee-jun, his strength was enough to keep him surviving on this journey so far. Cheolgu watched the endless string of losses, but he could never get used to them. Then a thought occurred to him. If this war of attrition continued and hunters died just as often as new volunteers arrived, the comrades who always seemed to be by his side would begin to disappear one by one until there was no one left at all. Cheolgu thought that someday even he would not be able to escape death. Would it really all end with the boss left completely alone? Even when that day comes, the master will keep moving forward, farther and farther. It must be a very dreary and unbearably lonely life to live. Baek Cheolgu thought that Yoon So-hyun had died. Another comrade. But surely there must be another path for hunters, one better than this. A huge pile of slain monsters loomed ahead. Yoon Lee-jun said the wine tasted bitter. Cheolgu noted that only 7 had survived. The master added that, in the end, less than 10% had survived. He said this could have been avoided. Yoon Lee-jun added that perhaps Cheolgu was right. His partner said he no longer intended to stand by and watch senseless sacrifices. He wanted to go back to strengthen the hunter system from within. Yoon Lee-jun would continue moving forward. The protagonist replied that there was no other way. Cheolgu suggested that someday the day would come when even the master would decide to stop. The Guardian added that this is where their paths diverge. Yoon Lee-jun said that Cheolgu had made the right decision. However, he is not nearly as cool as Cheolgu thinks he is. The protagonist added that heroes are those who know how to look back. For now, he does what he thinks is necessary, trusts his instincts, and moves forward. The master said that even if they look in different directions, he trusts Cheolgu's instincts more than anyone else's. After all, he is the younger brother of whom he is so proud. Cheolgu thanked him and said goodbye. He told Yoon Lee-jun to take care of himself. The protagonist said they should have a drink too. The young man poured the contents of the flask onto the ground and asked for forgiveness. Yoon Lee-jun told his fallen comrades to rest in peace. The protagonist left the area where the fallen hunters were buried. Hong-seok and Jin-ho continued to relax at the tavern pub. Yoon Lee-jun repeated that back in the days when he was still active, Things were different. If 100 people went into a dungeon, fewer than 10 would come out alive. Hong Seok said the master was exaggerating. That was back in the era of the first-generation hunters. Jin Ho noted that he had read about it in books too. Hong Seok added that the master was talking about events from 10 years ago. But the master didn't look much older than them. Hunters were divided into generations every 10 years. They were the third generation, the newcomers. Those who had just graduated from hunter school were the fourth generation. Hong Seok noted that these days, even groups on A-rank dungeon raids often return with everyone intact. Yoon Lee Jun acknowledged that modern hunters receive a very good education. They are a cut above the old guard and know how to act in a wide variety of situations without freezing up. Hong Seok agreed. The hunter training program is constantly updated to make training more effective. The curriculum has already undergone its 7th revision. As the number of hunters grows, so does the number of dungeons with gates, so there is still a shortage of manpower. But working conditions for hunters are gradually improving. Yoon Lee Jun acknowledged that the world has become a little better. Hong Seok noticed that the master had an impassive expression. Everything he says sounds very serious, Hong Seok whispered to his partner. What if the fact that the pub owner is a hunter isn't a fabrication either? Maybe he was actually just shuffling papers in an office or working somewhere nearby with hunters. Yoon Lee Jun said he could hear everything. The protagonist remembered a certain wine and offered to buy a glass on the house. The young hunters were delighted and said they were definitely in. Hong Seok and Jin Ho tasted the wine and noted that it was excellent. They prepared grape sorbet for the girl. Ruri said it was very delicious. In the morning, Lee Ruri stepped outside and looked around. The weather was nice and birds were flying all around. The girl was delighted when she saw the birds circling around her and even landing on her head. Suddenly, the sound of an alarm clock came from the house. Lee Ruri said that it was her uncle's alarm clock, which meant he was waking up now. Yoon Lee Jun woke up and yawned widely. He definitely still wanted to sleep. The protagonist noted that he never gets enough sleep in the mornings. He needs to get into the habit of going to bed earlier the night before. Ruri peeked out from behind the door. The girl smiled slyly. Her uncle asked why she was so restless today. Ruri suggested they go explore the neighborhood. Yoon Lee Jun replied that he was very tired and would rather stay home. The girl looked disappointed. Her uncle said he'd agree to her request, but he needed to take a shower, and Ruri would have to wait. While out for a walk in town, Ruri got an ice cream cone. The girl said it was cold, refreshing, and sweet. The girl noticed that the sun was shining brightly today, so the ice cream seemed even tastier. Suddenly, Ruri winced and said her head was starting to hurt. Yoon Lee Jun remarked that this always happens when you try to eat too much cold food at once. Yoon Lee Jun heard a familiar voice. The sheriff was talking to a guy and telling him not to even think about running away. Apparently, he wanted to get himself into trouble. Why did he use his abilities for extortion? Everything was caught on camera. Ruri greeted her little sister, Jung. The sheriff also wished Ruri a good morning and asked where they were headed. Ruri replied that her uncle was going on a date. Min Jun admitted she didn't know the master was that kind of person. The master told the girl to stop talking nonsense. The sheriff continued questioning the suspect and told Ruri to have a good time. Yoon Lee Jun told the girl not to grow up to be as mean as the sheriff. Ruri promised. Ruri spotted a clothing store ahead and immediately dragged her uncle along with her. The girl was completely transformed after completely changing her appearance. After that, Ruri and Yoon Lee Jun went to a cafe and ate their fill of pastries. The girl offered her uncle a piece of her cake and treated him to some. After a long and interesting walk, Yoon Lee Jun and Lee Ruri headed home. The girl was tired and fell asleep in the hero's arms. After a while, Ruri opened her eyes. Yoon Lee Jun said that she had finally woken up. Ruri thanked her uncle and said she had a lot of fun today. She said she could walk the rest of the way on her own. Yoon Lee Jun told her to sit still. They were almost there. Ruri exclaimed that she loved it when her uncle carried her in his arms. Yoon Lee Jun suggested they be quiet. Ruri asked her uncle what would happen if, purely hypothetically, it turned out that his acquaintance wasn't human at all. Yoon Lee Jun was surprised. What was she talking about? Ruri explained that he might look like a human, pretend to be a human, but actually turn out to be a monster. The protagonist replied that even if he turned out to be different from what he seemed, it wouldn't change anything. He would still be himself, just as Ruri would always remain herself. The girl smiled in response. The protagonist told the girl once again not to squirm in his arms. She never listens to him. Hunter Kim Hwan was fighting monsters in the dungeon and noticed that he'd been too lucky earlier today. Kim Hwan noted that it all started because he'd drunk a lot the night before. However, he had no hangover in the morning. He had slept for only 4 hours, but apparently slept very well because he didn't feel tired. As always at this time, the hunter listened indifferently to the horoscope on TV. The screen reported that Aquarius would have a day filled with nothing but good things today. Next, Kim Hwan made himself some ramen to cure his hangover. The hunter decided he was lucky. 1 egg had 2 yolks. Kim Hwan admitted that ramen in the morning after a night of drinking is simply the food of the gods. Before work, the hunter read his favorite comic book. In it, his favorite hero finally got his revenge on his enemy, and he felt good. Kim Hwan said it was time to go to work and put on a black suit. As soon as the hunter approached the crosswalk, the traffic light turned green. When he reached the bus stop, Kim Hwan saw that the bus had already arrived. He'd made it just in time. On the bus, Kim Hwan took the last available seat and rode comfortably the whole way. The bus arrived without any delays. There were no traffic jams or stops at red lights. Kim Hwan thought that his luck today was clearly S rank. Dungeon manager Chae Min-ha checked his documents and said that Kim Hwan had an easy day ahead of him. The hunter checked his assignment and realized he had to exterminate goblins today. The mission was assigned a D rank. Chae Min-ha said that was all that was left. For a B rank hunter, doing something like this was a piece of cake. The manager added that there was one problem. Kim Hwan was the only available hunter ready to go out. Everyone else was already on missions. Min-ha added that she really didn't want to say this, but according to the rules, even low-level dungeons must be entered by at least 2 people. But if things are left as they are, a breach will soon occur in the dungeon, and then civilian casualties will be inevitable. Therefore, an order was issued. B-rank hunters and above must either clear it alone or abandon the mission entirely. Chae Min-ha noted that she was simply relaying the leadership's instructions, but she advised waiting for another hunter to return before setting out. Even if the dungeon's rank is low, anything could go wrong. Trying to rush things could lead to tragic consequences. The manager added that for Kim Hwan, defeating goblins was a piece of cake, but in the event of an unforeseen situation, it could be dangerous. The hunter said he was ready to take on the mission himself. Min-ha replied that it was a sensible decision. Going there alone was too dangerous, but waiting for someone else to arrive was risky as well. The manager realized, didn't Kim Hwan hear her? She had said it was dangerous to go there alone. No one would blame him if he didn't go. Kim Hwan said he had heard everything. However, if a breach occurs, someone could get hurt. The sheriffs are very busy right now too. Besides, if the records are accurate, the probability of anomalies is less than 5%, so everything will be fine. Choi Min-ha asked if Kim Hwan was really going to go. No one would appreciate the unnecessary risks he was taking. Even if the risk was minimal, there was no need to put himself in danger. Kim Hwan replied that if there was a way to avoid casualties, he had no right to pass up such an opportunity. He had to use his power to protect people. That was the very first principle of a hunter that he had learned. The manager noted that this is exactly what Guildmaster Bae Chil-gu always says. Looking at Kim Hwan, one might think he's an ambitious rookie who's just finished his training. However, it's not within her power to stop him. Chae Min-ha said she would take care of the paperwork right away. The hunter must try to return alive. The manager added that if anything happened, Kim Hwan should run away immediately. The hunter told Min-ha not to worry about him. Kim Hwan added that he was very lucky today. Using his sword, the Shadow Blade, the hunter effectively destroyed the monsters. Kim Hwan was more precise than ever today. Every strike hit its mark. At some point, the hunter felt tired. He had already killed no fewer than 100 monsters, but there was no end in sight. A 5% chance of anomalies? That wasn't true. The dungeon had already mutated. Kim Hwan suspected he'd used up all his luck that very morning. Now he was truly in trouble. Goblins surrounded him on all sides. There was no time to catch his breath. One morning, Lee Ruri told her uncle that her stomach hurt. It was cramping badly. Yoon Lee-jun replied that it was normal after 8 servings of ice cream. You shouldn't eat that much at once. Ruri admitted that it was very tasty and added that they shouldn't have left the ice cream where she could reach it. The door to the tavern swung open, and the sheriff appeared in the doorway. Minjung told the master that she needed help. The worried girl noted that Kim Hwan was in trouble. Yoon Lee-jun asked the sheriff to quickly explain what had happened. Minjung explained that the hunter had entered the dungeon and hadn't returned yet, even though the time limit had already expired. Apparently, he was unlucky. The dungeon had mutated. There aren't enough hunters and sheriffs right now, so reinforcements aren't coming. On top of that, she needs to stop another breach. Minjun begged the master to save Kim Hwan. The protagonist was already heading toward the dungeon. The manager greeted the master and said she was glad to meet him. Minjun had told her a lot about him. Chae Min-ha noted that she couldn't rely on retired veterans. However, there was no choice now. Time was running out, so she was counting on the master. Manhwa admitted that it was her fault. She shouldn't have sent the hunter alone. Yoonli-jun replied that she shouldn't be upset. It wasn't anyone's fault. The master added that everyone had been working themselves to the bone. Kim Hwan had simply been unlucky. But it wouldn't last long. Things would soon be back on track. Yoonli-jun added that there was no need to worry. He would definitely protect his client. Manhwa said she trusted the master. Yoonli-jun looked at the empty chip bag and sighed. He barely had time to eat them, and there were never enough. Che Manhwa noted that everything was just as they'd said. This man exuded the aura of a seasoned professional. The seasoned professional tried to scrape the last crumbs of chips out of the bag. He noticed that the portions had become quite tiny lately. Before entering the dungeon, the protagonist decided to grab a weapon and picked up a brick. Yoonli-jun declared that it was time to go, since they needed to protect the visitor to the tavern, dungeon. Originally, this word meant underground prison. Now, however, it refers to gateways to other worlds, which disappear only after certain conditions are met. When a dungeon appears, the Hunters Guild sends out a reconnaissance team to assess the threat level. Dungeon ranks range from S to F, for a total of 7 levels. By dispatching hunters of the appropriate rank, humanity could significantly increase its chances of survival. However, special dungeons would sometimes appear, rendering the reconnaissance results useless. Mutations occurred within the already studied structure, filling it with unpredictable factors. Endless regeneration and the appearance of mutants. The difficulty of clearing such dungeons is significantly higher than their stated rank. Hunters call this phenomenon the emergence of a singularity in the dungeon. Dungeons with singularities have claimed countless hunters' lives. Yoonli-jun noticed that this was strange. If they were reproducing as actively as the instructions stated, they should have appeared by now. He expected goblins to come pouring out in droves. Could this cave really be that deep and spacious? Goblins are vile monsters, the perfect embodiment of the principle. Strong against the weak, weak before the strong. They have an incredibly high reproduction rate. Under favorable conditions, their numbers grow at a frenzied pace, just like cockroaches. When the population becomes too large and food supplies run out, they resort to cannibalism, mercilessly devouring the weakest members of the tribe. In terms of height and intelligence, they are no different from ordinary children. An adult can easily defeat 1 or even 2 goblins. Thanks to their excellent night vision, they feel right at home in caves. Goblins know they're weak on their own, so they always stick together in groups. If goblins were even slightly smarter and stronger, they would rule the world, not humans. Yoonli-jun noticed that the stench from the goblins was becoming increasingly unbearable. They should be appearing soon. The protagonist spotted a single goblin and said it was his first visitor. As a token of gratitude, he would do it a special favor. The master employed a top-secret technique honed over years of hunting. The goblin was struck on the head with a brick. It was the first strike and an instant guaranteed victory. Yoonli-jun asked the goblin, "Did he enjoy the blow?" Another goblin appeared behind our hero. The master said that the next visitor shouldn't be so jealous. There were plenty more treats on the menu. Using an empty chip bag, the protagonist managed to grab the goblin's dagger by the blade. Yoonli-jun took the knife and thanked the goblin for the gift. He looked at the weapon and said it was a dagger made of scrap metal. With his next move, our hero plunged the knife into the goblin's neck and said it was just perfect. As he continued to strike, Yoonli-jun noted that if a weapon is too long, it's extremely awkward to wield in narrow caves. The master looked up and saw a group of goblins approaching. Yoonli-jun suggested they take turns and not crowd together. Or do goblins have their own preferences? After another strike, the knife in our hero's hands broke. The master reached into his pocket and said that with tips like that, these goblins didn't seem like normal customers. Yoonli-jun pulled a flashlight out of his pocket and turned it on. The bright light blinded the goblins. The monsters squinted and began covering their eyes with their hands. Such light was unfamiliar and harmful to them. Yoonli-jun noted that modern flashlights were incredibly powerful. Technology had reached a whole new level. Our hero plunged the broken dagger into the eye of the nearest monster. The protagonist snatched a club from the goblin's hands and began swinging it, sending the monsters flying in all directions. The guy noticed a stone axe in the hands of one of the goblins. A moment later, that axe was already chopping through the monster's skulls and bones. Our hero continued the bloody battle. However, it was more like a game of goal days. Yoonli-jun warned the goblins not to get into a fight if they knew they had no chance of winning. Was there even a single goblin here willing to listen to him? Threatening them with punishment, the protagonist said he was willing to spare them, but on one condition. They must raise their hands if they had seen another person here. A story about him might save them. Yoon Lee-jun thought that many years had passed, yet the goblins still hadn't learned to understand human speech. Why had he even bothered to speak to them? Suddenly, a huge monster emerged from the darkness. The protagonist thought, could this be the mini-boss's entrance? It must be a warrior goblin. But it doesn't belong in a D-rank dungeon. This is definitely a dungeon with a singularity. Yoon Lee-jun decided he had no choice. He would destroy all the monsters until he met Kim Hwan here. At some point, the master calmed down. All the goblins around him had been destroyed. The guy looked around and said there had been quite a few goblins. Yoon Lee-jun stated that he had killed about 50. However, they seemed to be reappearing. The protagonist wondered if this was really typical goblin behavior. The one who looked the strongest was just watching from behind. Yoon Lee-jun declared that this cunning scoundrel was unworthy of being called a warrior. The master said he was already getting bored. Would this monster show something interesting? The senior goblin sent his minions to attack the man. Yoon Lee-jun thought, have they really become braver just because there are too many of them again? He couldn't stand it. The protagonist decided to play around with the monsters a little. One of the goblins crept up from behind and attacked our hero, striking him in the back. The master lost his balance and fell face first. The monsters pounced on the man and began striking him with their weapons. The goblins didn't stop beating Yoon Lee-jun. Blood spattered everywhere. The senior monster showed bravery and moved closer to the man lying on the ground. He was confident of his safety. Yoon Lee-jun was surprised by what the goblins were doing. They shouldn't celebrate too soon. They'd better take a closer look. The master had said that the goblins should pay attention to exactly who they were turning into a bloody mess. The senior goblin looked at the victim and was terrified. After all, it was one of his own kind. On average, goblins' vision is 1/10 of normal. Because they can barely see anything, it's all too easy for them to fly into a rage. That's why they often don't even realize what they're doing. Yoon Lee-jun noticed that even if he were to put one of their own in the line of fire at the moment of the strike, they wouldn't notice it at all. The master noted that if the goblins were even a little smarter, they would be a much bigger problem for humans. Yoon Lee-jun thanked the goblins for remaining just as they were, stupid, low-level monsters. The elder goblin got scared and tried to run as far away from the man as possible. The master wondered if this creature could even be called a goblin. The strongest of them turned out to be the biggest coward. Yoon Lee-jun grabbed the goblin by the head and asked where he was planning to run. The only way out was across the river Styx. Hunter Kim Hwan, standing atop the monster's chests, said that these goblins stank unbearably. Kim Hwan decided to grab a snack and pulled out a package of protein bars. The hunter said that 27 hours had already passed since he got stuck in this dungeon. When would the rescuers arrive? Considering they were short-handed, it could take a long time. Kim Hwan didn't know how much longer he could hold out here. This might be his last protein bar. The hunter jokingly wondered if he should start eating goblins, like in dungeon delicacies. But he definitely wasn't capable of that. Kim Hwan had heard that goblins eat each other when they run out of food. Apparently, they have strong stomachs. The hunter said that you could actually die doing that here. If he'd known it would end like this, he definitely would have formatted the hard drive on his computer. Kim Hwan heard a suspicious sound and turned around. Behind him stood a large goblin who had dragged a fellow goblin along. The goblin opened its mouth and prepared to devour its prey. The hunter watched the scene unfold with horror and revulsion. The large goblin began tearing at the victim's flesh with its teeth and swallowing it. The hunter was surprised. Could a goblin really eat its own kind? He had never believed such a thing was possible before. This one looked exactly like a demon. Had the goblin turned into a demon? Kim Hwan grabbed his sword and assumed that this goblin hadn't noticed him yet. Should he attack in that case? The hunter decided it was a bad idea. He was already pretty tired. Besides, he didn't know how strong this monster was. The noise might attract other goblins. The young man thought that in situations like this, the best option was to slip away unnoticed before it spotted him. The monster sensed something was wrong and began sniffing the air and listening intently. Kim Hwan silently prayed that the monster wouldn't notice him. Yoon Lee-jun decided that the goblins in this area were dealt with. They needed to move on. The master said he had thoroughly checked everything here. However, no traces of the hunter Kim Hwan were found. Yoon Lee-jun said there was nothing to be done. They would have to go further down. Our hero stepped into the darkness. Kim Hwan tried to run away from the cannibal goblin as fast as he could. His pursuer kept up with him. Small goblins appeared in the hunter's path. He began to scatter them in different directions. Kim Hwan even politely apologized as he cleared a path for himself. All the hunter needed was for the goblins to get out of his way. Kim Hwan drew his sword from its sheath. If they wouldn't take the hint, he'd have to use force. The hunter used the Shadow Blade skill and pieces of the goblins flew off in all directions. The pursuer became distracted, trying to swallow the goblin's scattered parts. Kim Hwan thought this monster was a real glutton. He decided to eat right in the middle of the chase. The cannibal monster tossed another piece of goblin aside. He didn't like the taste. The hunter said it was unseemly to waste food. The monster kept up. Kim Hwan thought there was no escaping his pursuer. Running away wouldn't solve anything. However, confronting this monster head-on was too risky. At some point, the hunter realized that escape was no longer possible. He had reached a dead end. Kim Hwan thought that if things had turned out this way, and there was no choice, then he was finished. He couldn't defeat the endlessly respawning goblins on his own. Consequently, clearing the dungeon was impossible. That meant he had to hide until the search party arrived. However, it won't be easy to evade the senses of this creature, which resembles a dungeon boss. Still, if he can take out even one of them, he might just manage to hold out. Kim Hwan drew his sword from its sheath and thought that the monster had seen him running away, so it was surely underestimating him. If he could pick the moment when the monster let its guard down and land a powerful blow, his chances of survival would be higher. But he had only one chance. The monster approached the dead end and wondered, where had the man gone? The fire was dying down, and the monster realized the man had been there just a moment ago. Anticipating a kill, the goblin began to sniff and listen. Suddenly, a blade flashed out of the darkness and the goblin was wounded. The blade appeared from the darkness, where the shadows swallowed the light. The goblin could do nothing. He was constantly struck by the blade, and his body began to bleed. Kim Hwan thought that by becoming a shadow, he would devour the flame of life. The hunter stepped out of the shadows and continued to strike blow after blow. Kim Hwan thought he hadn't yet perfected this technique. However, now he needed to put all his strength into the strike. The Shadow Blade skill was activated once more. Something unexpected happened. The hunter's sword blade snapped. The monster laughed. A piece of the blade was stuck between its teeth. Kim Hwan was surprised, for this monster had broken his sword, which was stronger than most alloys. The monster grabbed the hunter and struck him in the chest. Kim Hwan was knocked aside. The goblin grabbed the hunter by the arm and pulled him toward itself. The monster continued to beat the man. Kim Hwan couldn't do anything to stop him. The hunter began coughing up blood. His condition was rapidly deteriorating. The monster screamed triumphantly, considering itself the victor and preparing to devour the man. Kim Hwan thought that this monster was too strong for a goblin. Something wasn't right here. The monster didn't let up. Its thirst for blood had clouded its judgment. Suddenly, a hole appeared in the wall behind the hunter. A hand emerged from it, and a voice said that he would not let the monster deliver the final blow. The wall collapsed, and Yoon Lee-jun emerged from it. The master declared that the monster was not allowed to touch the patrons of his pub. Yoon Lee-jun held the goblin by the arm and continued to say that no one would dare touch a human in this dungeon while he was watching. The protagonist noticed that this goblin, unlike the others, was brimming with power. But who was he going to strike? Yoon Lee-jun struck the monster, and it was crushed. The master continued to strike. The monster, bleeding profusely, fell onto its back. A decisive blow was delivered, and the monster was sent flying far backward. The master declared that this goblin was finished. A surprised Kim Hwan asked how the master was feeling. Yoon Lee-jun replied that Min Jung had come to him and asked for help. The monster was still alive, but Yoon Lee-jun said he would tell the hunter the details later. For now, they had to finish what they had started. The goblin tried to put up a fight, but he didn't do very well. The protagonist dodged the attack and counterattacked the monster. Yoon Lee-jun delivered a series of powerful kicks to the goblin's jaw and upper body. The goblin tried to do something, but he was no longer in control of the situation. The protagonist easily dodged the monster's slow blows. It looked as if the master was toying with the goblin. Yoon Lee-jun said that he would now demonstrate a strike that would turn his opponent into mincemeat. The goblin collapsed to the ground again. The beating of the monster continued, but now exclusively with his feet. Kim Hwan marveled at the master's strength and agility. The goblin hadn't managed to land a single blow. What kind of moves were these? The master's actions were impossible to predict. Yoon Lee-jun assumed that this time, the goblin was finished. However, the master was wrong. The goblin jumped to its feet and landed an unexpected blow. Yoon Lee-jun managed to block it at the last moment. Our hero concentrated and began dodging the monster's attacks once more. It seemed as though the goblin had found a second wind. The master grew angry and counterattacked his opponent once more. The goblin lost his balance and stumbled backward. Yoon Lee-jun continued to land a series of blows. The man said that no one had made him this angry in a long time. The protagonist warned that he would now strike much harder. After that, the monster would no longer be able to get back up. The hero's blows did indeed become harder and more intense. The goblin continued to cough up blood and was once again unable to resist. After a series of blows, a huge hole appeared in the monster's body. Its bodily functions were disrupted. The monster was lying on the ground again. The body showed no signs of life. The master thought it was finally over. Yoon Lee-jun brushed off his hands and breathed a sigh of relief. Kim Hwan was surprised. Could the master really have defeated such an indestructible monster? The master said he had expected something different from a visitor to his pub. This hunter had managed to hold out until his arrival. He was simply a fine fellow. Yoon Lee-jun tossed Kim Hwan a flask of liquor and told him to have a drink. If his body was aching, it should help. Kim Hwan took the opportunity and took a sip. He realized it was whiskey. The master said he always had the right drink on hand. Kim Hwan noticed that he really did feel better. Now he felt as if he had come back from the dead. Too bad it wasn't a health elixir. Yoon Lee-jun told the hunter that once they got out of there, proper doctors would patch him up. Judging by his appearance, Kim Hwan would still be able to walk on his own 2 feet. The hunter admitted that his body ached after the monster had tossed him around the cave. Kim Hwan looked around. Yoon Lee-jun asked what he was looking for. Kim Hwan asked where the rest of the rescuers were. The master replied that he had come alone. No one else had been sent here. The protagonist told the hunter to pull himself together since the boss had already been defeated. Besides, all the goblins along the way here had also been defeated. Because of this, the dungeon could close at any moment. Kim Hwan couldn't believe it. Had the master really organized a rescue mission all by himself? Yoon Lee-jun said it was time to head up and held out his hand. The hunter had to move if he wanted to live. Once back in the tavern, Kim Hwan admitted that this time he'd thought he wouldn't make it out. Min Jung asked, "Could someone as stubborn as Hwan really just die like that? He always clings to life with his teeth." The sheriff declared that she had no doubt everything would work out this time either. She hadn't been worried at all. Kim Hwan thanked the girl for her help. Min Jung was surprised. For what? Why all of a sudden so polite? The hunter explained that he knew she was the one who had asked the master for help. If Yoon Lee-jun hadn't shown up in time, things would have taken a turn for the worse. Min Jung turned away, looking embarrassed, and said she had just happened to find out about it and told the master. She added that she hadn't been worried about Kim Hwan at all. Kim Hwan thanked the girl once again. The tavern owner remarked that for someone who wasn't worried, she looked quite concerned when she ran in for help. Yoon Lee-jun added that the sheriff's eyes were filled with tears, but she had asked him to keep it a secret. Min Jung was indignant, while Kim Hwan smiled. The sheriff noticed that Kim Hwan's weapon had been smashed to pieces. The hunter admitted that nothing was left of it. Min Jung asked, "Wasn't that a T10 level sword?" "It's not that easy to break." The hunter replied that he used to think so too. However, the goblin boss had sunk its teeth into the blade, and it had shattered into pieces. Min Jung suggested that the sword might have worn out, since it had been a graduation gift. Kim Hwan said he didn't rule that out. Even the best weapons have a breaking point. The sheriff asked what he would do now. It wasn't easy for a swordsman of his caliber to go without a weapon. Maybe he should take it in for repairs. Kim Hwan replied that, for starters, he would stop by the 24th floor of the Cheolson Blacksmithing Center. Min Jung was surprised. Is the hunter serious? After all, that's where Barbados's workshop is located, one of the 5 greatest blacksmiths in the country. Min Jung asked if this sword was really that legendary. Kim Hwan replied that he hadn't expected it himself at first. He knew it was a high-quality item, but he didn't know it had been made by Domaine Barbados. Yoon Lee-jun asked if the visitors were talking about that very famous dwarf blacksmith. Min Jung was surprised. Does the master actually know him? Yoon Lee-jun said he hadn't heard that name in 100 years. The protagonist couldn't believe that the young Barbados was already among the country's top 5 blacksmiths. He turned out to be a talented young man. The sheriff was surprised at how extensive the master's connections were. Min Jung added that it was known the master was acquainted with the guild leader, Bae Chol-gu. And now it turns out he also knows a famous blacksmith. Yoon Lee-jun confirmed they had crossed paths back in their youth. Kim Hwan remarked that the more he learned about the master, the more questions arose. Min Jung asked who the pub owner really was. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he was a simple hunter. The patrons know this very well. Now he is just a retired hunter. Min Jung remarked that for a simple hunter, the master is too strong, overly responsive, and agrees to any request. The master is an exceptionally decent person. Kim Hwan added that the master always avoids giving direct answers, getting away with vague phrases. The hunter thanked the master once again for saving his life. Yoon Lee-jun replied that it was nothing, It was only natural for a pub owner to protect his valued regulars. The regulars were surprised to hear the master's admission. Yoon Jun said he didn't like small talk. If the hunter was grateful, he could order something else. The guest glasses were already empty. The sheriff ordered another beer. The bartender offered to make the hunter a cocktail of his choice. The hunter asked if the sheriff was paying for it herself. The girl confirmed. They were celebrating his return from the dead. Kim Hwan thanked her. Yoon Jun remarked that this reminded him of something. The owner decided to make the cocktail. Its name meant reviving the dead. The bartender explained that in the past, people with hangovers were compared to the dead, which is why this cocktail was considered the perfect hangover cure. It was first mentioned among hangover remedies in the century before last. The recipe hadn't changed in over 150 years. A legendary cocktail. The bartender prepared the cocktail and congratulated the hunter on his safe return. Kim Hwan tasted the drink and said it had a bright lemon flavor with notes of sweet orange. There were also hints of bitter herbs and the aroma of anise. Kim Hwan said it was very tasty. The host was glad to have pleased his guest. The hunter was surprised. Did people really drink something this strong for a hangover back then? This is clearly over 30 proof. Yoon Jun noted that people used to consider it beneficial back then. If you drink a little when you have a hangover, it feels better. But in reality, you just get drunk again. It merely postpones the hangover for a short while and puts a heavier strain on the liver. The owner added that the best remedies for a hangover are drinking plenty of fluids, moderate sugar intake, and vitamins. Min Jun received a fresh beer from the keg the bartender had just replaced. The sheriff remarked that fresh beer after work always tastes incredibly good. The girl asked him to repeat that. The owner said he would take care of everything right away. Kim Hwan asked who eats what to recover from a hangover. Min Jong replied that she eats burgers. Yoon Jun said he prefers rice soup. Kim Hwan was surprised. Why burgers? Sheriff isn't American after all. Min Jong replied that she shouldn't be judged. Such food is simple and works great. Kim Hwan noted that in such cases he prefers spicy fried pork. The sheriff was hearing about this method of fighting a hangover for the first time. The hunter added that at the taxi driver's cafeteria, they serve soybean sprout soup with the pork. It brings you back to your senses quickly. After the pork, you feel full and satisfied. Min Jong agreed that the food there is truly delicious. The hunter added that the wok fried dishes there are mind-blowing. Such cafeterias are far better than many Michelin-starred restaurants. The perfect seasoning and searing, he's amazed by it every time. Min Jung said that now she wants to eat there too. Kim Hwan suggested stopping by on the way home for a nice dinner. At the restaurant, the owner stood in a helmet. His head bowed submissively. The woman told him to know his place. She added that he owned nothing more than some cheap eatery. How dare he? Did he even know what kind of family she came from? The man in the knight's helmet continued to stand silently, his head bowed. The pub owner handed him a warm towel. The masked man took the towel and thanked the master. Yoon Jun guessed that today had been a rough day. The customer was surprised. How did the barman know that? The owner replied that it was written all over the young man's face. The visitor agreed. The master was right. Something unpleasant had happened today. Yoon Jun looked at the man's hands and then suggested that the wedding preparations weren't going very smoothly. The visitor replied that the master, as always, was perceptive. Our hero guessed that this guy had a major concern right now. His snack bar was thriving, and things were going very well with his girlfriend. The man in the mask replied that this was true. He was indeed thinking of marrying her. But it seemed it would take quite some time to get her approval. The guy noted that his future mother-in-law was categorically against it. She came by again today and told him to break up with her daughter. She also handed him an envelope with money. After he refused, she splashed water in his face. Yoon Jun suggested that the water might have seeped through the helmet. The visitor agreed and added that, in that case, they wouldn't have to worry about staying hydrated today. Yoon Jun acknowledged that starting a new family with someone is truly not easy. The man in the mask added that the couple's feelings are the most important thing. But it's also a union of two families, not just two lovers. The visitor added that it's very difficult. As a hunter, you never know when your time will come. A single second of carelessness is enough to lose your life. Even if the dungeon level is lower, the probability of dying simply decreases, but no one knows what might happen. Yoon Jun noted that survival rates have increased significantly lately, but the danger hasn't gone away. The man in the mask added that because of this, he has to live in fear every day. The visitor said that once his girlfriend had confessed something to him. Every time he went on a mission in the dungeon, she was so worried she couldn't sleep. The man in the mask told her that everything would be fine, that she had nothing to worry about. He took her hand to calm her down. In that moment, he realized that everything was far from okay. After all, if he continued to be a hunter, he might indeed leave her alone one day and die. His scarred hands spoke louder than words. The visitor added that he stared at his hands for a long time, then lifted his head and looked into her eyes again. Unlike the radiant and cheerful girl he had once met, she now looked exhausted. She had spent sleepless nights worrying about him. Her face had lost its luster from these worries. Looking into her eyes, the young man made a decision. The man in the mask realized it was time to step down. The visitor added that he had always wanted to be by her side. He wanted to be a source of strength for her, not a cause of fear. So he ended his work as a hunter and retired immediately. The man added that he still clearly remembers how happy she was and what a sense of relief she felt. She blamed herself for the fact that he had to give up everything because of her, but she couldn't hide her joy. This only shows how much she had suffered. Yoon Lee-jun admitted that he saw the young couple after the hunter retired. It really did them good, because they started to look much happier. The visitor said that these words encouraged him. While working as a hunter, he had managed to save a decent amount of money, but he didn't think a person could just live without doing anything. That is exactly why the decision was made to open a restaurant. The night's takeout restaurant. The visitor added that he is a good cook, and he certainly has plenty of stamina. Yoon Lee-jun agreed. The night's spicy pork is simply incredible. One serving never seems like enough. The knight noted that when it comes to impeccable taste, he's second to none. Now he has regular customers, and he thought he had finally found his calling. But seeing how his future mother-in-law disliked him, he realized he had a long road ahead. The pub owner admitted that reality is always harsh. Earning someone's approval is never easy. He realized he had expected this, but it still hit him harder than he thought. Li-ruri walked up to the knight and told him that Uncle should eat these candies and not be sad. Once he ate them, he'd feel better right away. Sweets heal better than any doctor. The knight thanked the girl for the treat and said he already felt a surge of strength. Ruri remarked that sweets were simply a miracle. The knight agreed. Nothing lifts your spirits like sweets. The man in the mask asked, "Is the owner really preparing something?" He hasn't ordered anything yet. Yoon Lee-jun, shaker in hand, replied that it would be a drink on the house. A cocktail recipe had popped into his head, and he wanted to make it especially for the visitor. The owner added that it would be a variation of a gin-based martini. A classic martini uses only gin, but this cocktail will also include vodka. They need to be mixed well in the shaker, and then the two completely different drinks will blend harmoniously, creating a new martini flavor. There is no greater miracle than two different people meeting and building a strong family. The bartender added that even if their life is good, they shouldn't let it break them. Yoon Lee-jun held out a glass and said it was a Vesper martini. The owner of the tavern added that, from what he'd heard, the man standing before him was a very decent person. It was only a matter of time before his future mother-in-law would warm up to him as well. The knight, without removing his mask, tasted the prepared cocktail. Afterward, he said it was quite delicious. The visitor thanked the bartender. It was a true elixir of vitality in a single glass. The owner of the tavern was glad that the visitor liked his cocktail. Li-ruri approached her uncle, squinted, and smiled. A man entered the pub. He greeted everyone politely. The owner asked what the visitor wanted. The man smiled and said he had already found everything. The man turned to the knight and said he'd known it all along. He'd guessed he'd find this guy here. The masked man turned around and realized that the man standing before him was his future father-in-law. The knight was surprised. How did his father-in-law end up here? The man replied that he wanted to meet the knight, so he asked Hyun-jung where he could find him. She replied that he would most likely be found here. The knight greeted the man again and invited him to join him. The man said he would gladly accept the offer, but first he wanted to do something. The father-in-law bowed to the knight and apologized for his wife. The knight said he felt awkward and that there was no need to bow to him. The man explained that his family had been in the construction business for only 2 generations. So the business wasn't that big, and the family wasn't particularly influential. Yoon Lee-jun thought, if even the chairman of Korea Construction considers his business not that big, and his family not very influential, the rest of the business community should stop calling themselves influential people and flaunting their money. The knight patted his father-in-law on the back and said that a family that raised a daughter like Hyun-jung simply had to be impressive. The man admitted that his daughter had indeed grown up to be remarkable. He asked if his son-in-law came here often. He often drove by, but had no idea such a place even existed. The knight replied that this was his favorite pub, the tavern. Hunters were frequent guests here, but ordinary people hardly knew about it. Yoon Lee-jun greeted the guest once more and said he was glad to see the father-in-law of a regular customer here. The man shook the owner's hand and said he liked it here. Now he would drop by from time to time, counting on a warm welcome. The owner said he was always happy to see new guests. The man sat down at the bar and ordered a Faiza gin to start. The father-in-law was relieved to see that his son-in-law was much calmer than he had expected. He had been afraid that the young man was still furious. The knight admitted that he was a little discouraged. But if he got angry over his mother-in-law's actions, it would only upset Hyunjung. The knight added that hunters were used to this kind of treatment. The man in the mask noticed that things had improved significantly lately. When hunters get married, families usually react in one of two ways. Either they accept them with caution because of their fame and easy money, or they point fingers, calling them butchers who could die at any moment. The son-in-law noticed that hunters' bodies are different from those of ordinary people right from the start, so they don't often hear kind words directed at them. However, on the battlefield, they have to see things that are even worse. This is an inevitable discomfort for both sides. That's why hunters have their own separate places to rest. The man said he'd heard that the son-in-law had been a hunter before opening the restaurant. Why did he decide to retire? The knight replied that he wanted to be close to Hyunjung. The man added that while he was working as a hunter, his girlfriend was very worried. The profession is very dangerous. So, after thinking it through, he decided to live as long as possible to protect her for the rest of her life. The knight added that he didn't want to see her tears anymore. That's why he retired and returned to a normal life. The man said that his daughter had truly found herself an excellent husband. Whoever raised this young man can be proud of him. The father-in-law asked how deeply the young man planned to get under his skin. At this rate, even he was ready to fall in love with this knight. The son-in-law replied that it was an honor to hear such words. The man told the knight not to pay attention to his wife's words. She had listened to all sorts of gossip and, without thinking, had spoken nastily. The knight said that this only proved how much she loved her daughter. The groom declared that in that case, he wouldn't worry about his mother-in-law anymore. The man replied that soon she would be able to love her son-in-law. The father-in-law asked what the young man was drinking. The knight replied that he had a Vesper in his glass. The father-in-law noted that this was the very cocktail James Bond invented in the movie Casino Royale. They say the recipe was created by Ian Fleming's best friend, Ivar Bryce. Ritzer suggested that the father-in-law knew a lot about cocktails. The man replied that he liked both drinks and movies. Right now, the most important thing for him was enjoyment. Having a drink and watching a movie after work. Ritzer thought that he hadn't watched anything in years, even though he used to be glued to the screen. The head of the construction firm asked what kind of movies his son-in-law liked. Yoon Lee-jun and Lee Ruri watched from a distance as the future in-laws got closer and talked in the tavern. An emergency announcement was made over the loudspeaker again. A huge monster had appeared in Sector C. Sheriffs are already on their way and will resolve the situation soon. All citizens are asked to proceed immediately to the nearest shelter. The woman was worried. Why did this happen today when the shipment was supposed to arrive? Why does the government always let this happen? Why does her husband pay so much in taxes every month? Suddenly, a passerby shoved the woman aside. She was outraged. How dare he do that? Did he even know who she was? The orc looked back and said he didn't care. He wasn't going to die here. If she had the strength to scream, she'd better run away from here. The woman began to waver, demanding that this scoundrel return immediately and apologize. The victim looked back and saw a bus careening out of control toward her. She was terrified, closed her eyes, and pressed her hands to her head, trying to protect herself. However, nothing happened. After a moment, the woman opened her eyes and saw something incredible. Standing before her was a masked knight. In one hand, he held a bag of groceries. With the other, he was holding the bus up to keep it from falling. The woman was saved. Many people witnessed the scene. A brave knight had saved a woman. Could it really be a hunter? The knight turned to the woman and said he was glad that Mother was unharmed. The masked man carefully lowered the bus to the ground and told the woman to take cover in a safe place. Now he needed to help the rest of the civilians evacuate. The woman looked at the deserted street and was surprised. A passerby asked, "Did the retired hunting instructor decide to help too?" The passerby turned out to be Chairman Pei Cheol-gu. He added that this man's behavior had given him hope. The knight saw the chairman and greeted him. He noted that it had been a long time since they'd met. 2 years had already passed. Cheol-gu thanked the knight for responding to the emergency call despite being retired. The knight replied that he simply had a duty to protect this area, since he lived here. Besides, he knew there was a shortage of hunters right now. In that case, Pei Cheol-gu suggested they go and deal with the monster. The knight said he needed to finish before dinner. Today was his turn to cook for his girlfriend. The former hunter added that if they were delayed, he would charge overtime. The chairman replied that he wouldn't mind paying double. The woman was puzzled. What was going on here? She thought her daughter's boyfriend was just an ordinary former hunter and didn't know he was acquainted with such a respected person. Yoon Lee-jun, holding Lee Ruri's hand, walked down the deserted street. The master said they had bought a lot of things today. Ruri noticed that the grocery bag was heavy. Her uncle explained that the bag was heavy because the girl had stuffed all sorts of things into it. Ruri realized they were treats. The master added that while he was unpacking the groceries, Ruri had stuffed them back into the basket again. He wasn't sure the two of them could eat all of it. The girl reminded him that when it came to sweets, her stomach was bottomless. Yoon Lee-jun said that if Ruri didn't listen to him anymore, he would forbid her from eating sweets. The girl replied that that was inhumane. The master took a juice packet out of his bag. The girl pointed out that she had taken that juice for herself. The master said he was thirsty, and the juice really was delicious. Ruri said she wanted that juice too. Yoon Lee-jun warned that the girls needed to go to sleep soon, and it wasn't a good idea to drink juice before bed. The girl pointed out that Uncle was drinking the juice himself. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he still had work to do, so he wouldn't be going to bed anytime soon. At the tavern's entrance, Yoon Lee-jun saw a boy lying there and wondered, who could that be? The boy was asleep or perhaps unconscious. Yoon Lee-jun carried the boy home and put him to bed. The boy tossed and turned and mumbled in his sleep that he wanted to sleep for 5 more minutes. The boy rolled over onto his other side. Lee Ruri was sleeping next to him. Suddenly, the boy woke up and was startled. Who was next to him? He looked at the girl and said she had really scared him. He screamed loudly in fright, but the girl continued to sleep. The boy thought it was no wonder he was scared. When he woke up, she was right in front of him. But who was she? Although she looked familiar. He looked around, trying to figure out how he'd ended up here. The pub owner, as always at this hour, was tidying up the bar. Yoon Lee-jun heard a noise, turned around and saw the boy coming down from above. The boy saw the man and asked who he was and why he was in this house. Yoon Lee-jun realized that he was the one who should be asking the boy questions, since the boy had been lying unconscious in front of the pub. The owner noted that the boy might have caught a cold while lying on the bare floor. Yoon Lee-jun said that if the boy didn't want to talk, he didn't have to answer. The boy thanked the man. The master said he would give the child a phone so he could call home and let his family know since they must be worried. The boy thought for a moment and said he had no family. He was on his own. Yoon Lee-jun said that now everything was clear and asked if the boy had anywhere to go. The answer was no. Yoon Lee-jun thought this was yet another adventure he'd have to deal with. The boy stood silently, head bowed. It was clear that he really had nowhere to go. Suddenly, the boy's stomach growled. He was clearly hungry. Yoon Lee-jun suggested the boy sit down in a corner. The pub owner said he would whip something up quickly, realizing the boy was hungry. Before long, a sandwich called the Egg and Mayo Bomb was ready. Freshly squeezed orange juice was served on the side. The owner said that if the boy wasn't full or wanted something else, he could just ask. The boy thanked him. The boy tried the sandwich and couldn't help but say it was delicious. Yoon Lee-jun replied that he hadn't doubted it, since he'd made it himself. The boy ate the sandwich and thanked him for the delicious and nutritious meal. The master said that if the boy had nowhere to go, he could stay there for a while. The owner added that he could find him a place where he could stay longer. The boy agreed. Lee Ruri came downstairs. The girl said it smelled really good in there and greeted the boy. Ruri threw her arms around her uncle and said she wanted to eat something delicious too. The master promised to make her the same thing. The boy was surprised. Could this really be Lee Ruri? The girl took her breakfast and said that the treats had been successfully obtained. Mission accomplished. Lee Ruri offered the boy some delicious food, but he had to promise to keep it a secret. The boy asked, "Is she Ruri, number 17, the only successful test subject?" The boy said his name was Nora. He was number 37. He had been created in the same laboratory as Ruri. A year ago, Nora fought a huge man in a mask. He had a metal pipe in his hands. The man kicked the child in the face, and Nora was sent flying far to the side. The boy jumped to his feet, leaped high into the air, and counterattacked his opponent with both feet. The blow landed squarely on the jaw. The man groaned in pain but remained standing. The boy jumped onto his shoulders and continued the beating. The masked man fell onto his back. Nora jumped on top of him and landed several punches. A man in a white coat entered the office and told the boy to stop. He clapped his hands and noted that defeating a D-rank hunter convicted of a crime without even resorting to demonization was much more impressive than he had expected. The man added that the experiment was over for today. The boy had performed well. Nora looked silently at the adult. The hunter remained lying on his back. The man said that subject 37 had successfully passed the experiment. The problem was that upon waking, he would go mad and lose control of his mind. However, he was still the best test subject of all those who had been created. Iroh entered the room, holding the girl by the hand. The man thought that if it weren't for researcher Iroh and number 17, he would be the best. He noted that Iroh was profiting from his results thanks to sheer luck, and told number 37 to work harder to become the best specimen. The boy stared intently at the girl. She was the only successful case where awakening had not been accompanied by demonization. Number 17. Nora thought that the researcher Iroh had given the girl the name Ruri. The boy envied her. He wanted the day to come when he too would have a name and be able to introduce himself. The boy said his name was Nora. He was number 37, and they had been created in the same laboratory. Ruri declared that he was confusing someone. He was definitely mistaken. The girl turned and ran away, shouting that she had no idea what this guy was talking about. Nora was surprised. Had he really said something wrong? Yoonli Jun told the boy that he and Uncle Dokbae had to step away for a little while. The boy was to keep an eye on everything. The master added that there was food on the table, and he could eat whenever he got hungry. Ruri agreed. Kim Dokbae was surprised when he was called uncle, since he wasn't even married. Yoonli Jun pointed out that the priest was already quite grown up, so he deserved the title. Ruri asked the boy if he wanted to eat. The girl added that she was very hungry and that food should be eaten while it's still hot. A nutritious children's breakfast appeared on the table. Ruri said it looked very appetizing. The girl agreed that it looked really delicious. Nora wondered, what was that delicious smell? The boy admitted that he had never seen food like this in his life. Every cell in his body was screaming that it must be insanely delicious. Ruri asked, "Is this the first time Nora has seen something like this?" "They definitely don't serve this in the lab." Nora was surprised. She had just said she didn't know anything about any lab. Ruri asked the boy to pretend he hadn't heard. Nora promised. Ruri replied that she would also pretend nothing had happened. It didn't matter now. The children tasted the food and agreed that it was very tasty. The girl said there was juicy meat here, drizzled with a sweet and sour sauce. Ruri told Nora not to be shy and to eat faster. Uncle is a great cook. Nora started eating very quickly. Ruri looked at him in surprise. The girl asked, "Is it really that good?" When she first tried food like this, she couldn't stop eating either. Nora admitted that it was amazing. Could such delicious food really exist in the world? Lee Ruri agreed that the food her uncle made was the most amazing. Nora declared that he had simply lost his mind over the food. It was incredibly delicious. The guy turned around and ran out of the room, saying he wanted to take a walk. Ruri stayed behind to finish her meal. Nora stopped off to the side. The boy felt embarrassed, but the dish was incredibly delicious. Nora said that even after going through all those experiments, Ruri could still laugh so brightly. He envied the girl. The boy thought that if he went too far, he might get lost and not find his way back. Nora turned around and decided it was time to go back. A man in a white lab coat appeared on the road. This time, his face was burned. The man said he had finally found number 37.